afternoon, everybody. I'm your host, Lionel Tavares from the Sabbath at Midnight, here to bring you these new t-shirts we just got made. They have the crucifix in the front, very obvious, so you could show off exactly who you represent. The back has the old school, old English. Okay, we're keeping it gangster, and we're keeping it truthful. So if you guys want to grab one of these shirts and you're not ashamed to represent Jesus Christ, and you want to help a Christian podcast grow and reach bigger audience, please reach out and we will sell you one of these shirts for a very reasonable price. If you are international, it will be a little extra, but work with me and I'll work with you. I hope you guys have a good day and God bless.
Welcome back to the Sabbath at Midnight. We have a popular guest from our last show. The Nephilim Look Like Clowns, Paul Stobbs from the UK. And tonight we have another really great show. We're going to discuss the Hat Man, and maybe get into some other things like gestures and who knows, maybe the Nephilim. And it's always good to have Paul back, our brother from across the pond.
Amen.
Paul, how's it going, man? Good to have you back.
It's going well. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So yeah, this topic tonight is really, really interesting. From the Hat Man perspective, I was just wondering, one of my first things that come to mind is yourself as a researcher. Did you ever experience this entity?
Yes. To be honest, it was one of the earliest memories I have of like a major spiritual experience with the other world and like demonic entities. It was kind of my one of my wake up calls, to be honest. It happened maybe. Trying to think back now when I published the video, but I think it was roughly probably around 2000, either 2011 or 2013, between that time in my life, about a decade ago, just more. I had this this dream, though it felt like more real than anything I've ever experienced in my entire life, to be honest. But I had this bizarre encounter with this thing called the Hat Man. Now, just to preface this, I had never heard of this thing before. I knew nothing about it. Okay, it was I had just started to dip my toes into the supernatural concepts and spirituality and conspiracy. But at this point, I wasn't really like a particular well-versed researcher by that point of much, you know. But I was. Okay, so let's that being said, that I didn't know anything about really the demonic realm at this point. So when this happened to me, it was really random. I'll just tell you the story. So I'm asleep, and there's a video on my channel which documents all of this with visuals and sounds, because it's one of those dreams where you just have to write it all down as soon as you wake up. And I made a video out of it. But it basically involves me walking through a park, and I'm walking through this rolling hill park down a path. There are people around me, picnicking, throwing frisbees, walking the dog, laughing and playing, having a good time. And I'm walking towards this old big metal Victorian wrought iron gate with these beautiful floral iron patterns kind of weaved into it. It's this giant gate and this big brick archway, which the gates were nested between. And then there was like hedges on either side of the gates. They weren't very particularly tall hedges. They were about waist high, but that's what happened. And behind this gate, I could see there was this kind of this hedge maze, you know, like you get at maybe like corn fairs or things like that, or in like old parks, like the one in The Shining, for example, that hedge maze they had there, but just a lot shorter in height, basically. So I could see this hedge maze, but as I'm walking towards this gate, I noticed there are people drinking tea at these old Victorian cast wrought iron chairs, you know, and these little tables, and they're having like a quintessential British tea party type thing. You know what I mean? This is old Victorian style.
Right.
It was bizarre. And I was walking towards these people, and I realized I recognized these people. And there were some of my older dead relatives, like my great aunties and things like this, you know. I think even my granddad was there on my mum's side, who I never met. I only had photographs of, you know. It was very strange. But it was basically just that all my dead relatives were drinking tea outside of this gateway. And I'm walking up towards them, and they're kind of all happy to see me. They're like, "Oh, join us, Paul. Come. It's so great to see you. You know what I mean? Let's catch up," this type of thing. And I'm kind of like just going with it. I don't think I'm dreaming by this point. You know, I'm just going with it as though it's a perfectly normal thing to be seeing. And I sit down with them, and you know, I'm laughing and joking with them, and I drink the tea that they offer me. And not long after that, suddenly my phone starts to ring in my pocket. So I take out this old, like really old flip phone, like a Motorola Razor or something, you know, like a really old flip phone of the day.
Yeah, I remember those.
We don't have, when I'm having this dream, flip phones really are a thing of the past by this point, but this is what I've got. And it's that old Nokia theme tune, that kind of type noise. And, you know, I just answer the phone while I'm talking away. You know, I'm like, hello. And this voice says to me, don't think I've forgotten about our previous conversation. I'm coming for you now. And suddenly the atmosphere changes, you know. All the color just gets sapped out of this beautiful park I was in. It's dark, it's gray, clouds are looming type of thing. The laughter's stopped. I'm alone. There's no one else here now. Everyone's disappeared. And I have this dreaded feeling and realization that I'd heard this voice before and I knew who it was, you know, and I owed it something. And then just as quickly while I'm having this moment, I remember in this dream another dream. Okay, so we're getting Inception now. It was a really bizarre experience, but suddenly I'm taken back and I'm in this place, okay? And I can only describe it as like a music festival that's well within a few days into the festival. So nothing's fresh anymore. All the ground is just pounded into mud from, you know, days of partying and footfall from this festival. And there's like wooden structures everywhere and stages set up and lights flashing everywhere, people screaming and wailing and dancing all around, you know, and I'm kind of like moving through this layered, strange festival of sorts at nighttime. And then I'm on stage at this festival. Mm-hmm. And there's, as far as the eye can see, just people screaming, you know, and I think about it now in retrospect, it's kind of like a festival itself, the sound of a festival, you know, when you really hear it roaring and screaming. If you closed your eyes, I imagine that's probably actually what hell would sound like, you know, all this screaming and wailing type of thing.
Right.
So I don't know where I was exactly, but I remembered I had this dream months ago where I was at this festival on this stage. Okay. And I was on the stage and I don't remember what happened exactly. But then I come back into the other dream where I'm at this garden, where I'm on the phone to this voice, this evil, horrible sounding, sinister voice. And I kind of remember I met this guy at that festival and I owe him something. And I don't know what it is, but I owe this guy something and he's coming now to collect type of thing. I just knew in that moment. And then just as suddenly as I had this vision and I realized, you know, this moment, I looked to the horizon of this park I'm in, and coming over it is this character, this silhouette of this person. And he's wearing a long, purplish, dark trench coat. He has multicolored ribbons just flailing off of him in all directions, kind of flying behind him and just everywhere. Multicolored ribbons of all shapes and patterns and ragged, straight, neat, shiny, multicolored patterned. Kind of like Morris dancers with the maypole ribbons, you know, something like that.
Right.
Wearing this long purple trench coat, and he had this hat on, this fedora-shaped top hat style thing, wide rimmed. His face was hidden behind the shadows of it, but I could see these glowing eyes, these glowing yellow golden eyes underneath. Oh, and he had a cane, and he was kind of just hobbling towards me from this distance, and I could see him, and I knew I do not want this thing to get anywhere near me.
No kidding.
So I just turn around and I try to run into the hedge maze. Trying to open the gates and get into the maze. But it's typical when you're in fear and shock in a dream and you try and run.
Yeah.
Suddenly you can't run anymore, and the air feels like jelly and it's thick and like molasses, and you're trying to just push through, like swim through the air type of thing. But I do move slowly, and I'm getting through this hedge maze, and I'm like, I'm not going to have any time to figure this out, this maze. So I just start hopping over the hedges to get to the other side. So I'm hopping over these this very waist-high hedge maze, it's kind of pointless maze, to be honest. And I get to the side, and so there's a similar archway metal gate at the opposite side, and I can see the civilization through it, like a city of some kind, so I'm trying to get to it, basically, so I can get away. And I get through to the other side. I'm not looking back, but I know he's there. I feel it, I feel this eyes piercing into the back of my body type of feeling. And I get through to the side, and I'm on a city road. And as I look up, and the skyscrapers in front of me, you know what I mean? And I run specifically to the right. And I just go as far as I can. And then before I know it, the road in front of me, the whole world in front of me just peels away. And I'm kind of stood at the edge of a crumbled world. The road has stopped. There's metal pipes sticking out that drop beneath me, where the pipes would have been, type of thing. Just gone, it's removed. And there's kind of like a hanging metal sign hanging over to the left of me from the buildings that were there originally, are now just torn away. And it's just a dark void in front of me of brown, golden, misty, disgusting color in front of me. It's not a natural color. It's like just the color of death and misery, basically, is how I would describe it. And I'm here, and I realize I can't run any further. There's nothing I can do. This is it. This is the end, And I turned around, and he was there.
Oh, wow.
And all I could think to do in that moment was wrench my eyes open. And with a massive struggle, writhing and basically screaming and covered in sweat, I woke up, luckily. But it was a struggle to tear myself away from it. And in that moment, when he was there in front of me, I literally felt like, this is it. I'm going to die. This is the end for me. This is it now. And I was kind of coming to an acceptance of that in a way. There's no more left to run.
Absolutely.
But I kind of, I don't know, something deep down, I knew this isn't real. This is a dream. I can wake up. And I did. I managed to wrench my eyes open with great difficulty. It's like something was forcing me to stay asleep, and I was fighting against it, basically. And then I woke up, and, immediately after that event, I was shook up. I didn't sleep the rest of that night.
I can imagine.
My mind was reeling. Like, what was this? What was this thing? And how the hell did it manage to follow me through dreams? This character, and like I had met this thing in a previous dream months ago.
Wow, really?
And it's come after me in this new dream. I met this character in a dream where I was at a festival maybe like months prior, and it's called me up in a new dream to tell me it's coming to collect whatever deal I made with it. It's it's my time to fulfill the end of the bargain or something. So it feels like I'd made a deal with this thing in a previous dream for something. And I don't know what it was. I have no recollection or memory of that particular deal I made. But this thing clearly remembered, and since then, that day, I've ever wondered just what dreams truly are, and how important it is to not eat and drink anything in a dream if it's offered to you. I'm learning things like this, because it's kind of opening yourself up, or taking offerings from entities which are probably not really my dead relatives, and the whole, my life has never been really the same since. I looked into the Hat Man, just Googled searching the Hat Man, and I found an author called Heidi Hollis.
Okay.
And Heidi Hollis has written a book called The Hat Man, as a compilation of evil encounters with this entity. And it's just a book full of people's testimonies encountering this being. And here I am, a brand new person by this point, who's also just had a similar brush with this shadowy entity. And like I said, I had no prior knowledge of this thing prior to having this dream. It was the first for me. And then to realize that people from all over the earth have had the same encounter suddenly made me realize this is probably more than just a dream. This was actually a lot more serious. And from Hat Man to shadow people to demonology to, the rest of it, coming to Christ, learning about the Nephilim and all that type of thing. Here I am like a decade later, and, and saved by the blood of Jesus, basically, to protect myself from these things in the future, you know. But from that day on, it was my path forward to being a full believer in all the spiritual warfare stuff. You know, it was a big moment for me, but I would not wish on my worst enemy to encounter this thing. And that's probably where I'll leave that story for now.
It's just listening to you, just, you know, discuss your dream. I was thinking back to a time where my dad, now long past.
I was just about to say that
Go
story.
ahead, tell him.
No, go ahead. It's a Hat Man story, right?
It's a Hat Man story.
Oh yeah, this is a creepy one, man.
I don't know what he was doing one night. He was out in a place called El Centro, California, and he was coming back from someplace. I don't remember that, too many years ago, but something was following him. He says a very tall guy with the trench coat, and he had a top hat. And my dad started yelling at him. I think he started throwing rocks at him. And my dad started running, and he says that this thing started running. And he says inside the cloak, inside the trench, it was all red.
But he didn't reveal that until the end, like a bat. He opened it up. Remember?
Yeah, it was really creepy. It was really creepy. And my uncle, years later, had the same experience out in a city called Indio, California. And he was, I guess he got home, and the story is that he told my grandmother what had happened, and they gave him sugar water back then, you know, for shock. But he described basically the same thing, you know, a long trench coat with the top hat, and inside the trench coat or the cloak, it was all red.
Well, let's not forget it also didn't have a face. There was no face there. Like when my grandfather explained the story to me, there was no face. It was just a black figure. No eyes, no nose, no nothing.
So wait, what, you know, I don't know what causes people to have these dreams or experience a Hat Man. I mean, I've seen, you know, shadow people, and I was reading an article by, let's see, her name is, it was an article in Psychology Today. It says that some people may consider the Hat Man to be, you know, obviously a form of a shadow person. And in this article of Psychology Today, paranormal expert Rosemary Allen Gulley, she says the shadow people could potentially wear hats and cowls to cover up imperfect heads. Like maybe something, I don't know, elongated head or something that people would call extraterrestrial. So there's a lot of, you know, different things about this, you know, the sleep paralysis phenomenon. People experience the Hat Man. So the list goes on and on and on. And like
I could give you like a rundown of what I've basically discovered over the years to try and then see if you guys have any counter information to it, to be honest, because like I said, the interpretations of just exactly what we're dealing with here vary dramatically. And encounters aren't always identical necessarily, but the underlying themes are the same, that it's a person with a trench coat and a hat that seems to be a leader of some kind of these shadow entities. That seems to be, he's like, as far as shadow entities go, he's like the top dog, if you get what I mean. That seems to be the common theme running throughout it.
Yeah, I think the first paralysis was in sleep paralysis was in 1664. It was the incubus or the nightmare. And I guess, you know, they put that one and one together, you know, explaining that sleep paralysis was some form of black magic or mythical monsters, demons, and the Egyptians believed the genie was behind sleep paralysis, and the indigenous people of South Africa believed it was caused by the Tokolshi. Hope I'm saying that right. A dwarf-like water spirit, and the Turkish believed the Karabashan spirit-like creatures were behind the phenomenon. I don't know. I'm just reading this article.
Yeah.
But, I mean, what do you? Yeah, go ahead and give us your.
I want to hear what you have to say.
Right. Well, first of all, like you said, there are these encounters people have during sleep paralysis. The majority of the time is where they witness things like shadow people. But I know it's not confined strictly just to people who are under sleep paralysis. People can see them at any moment, at any time. The general shape of these entities is often humanoid, but not necessarily human. So, personally, just cutting to the chase, I think they are the Nephilim entities, what we call demons on the other side of the veil. The same entities people see on DMT in these colorful, fractal, jester-like forms. My theory as to why they are shadowed, in a sense, I think it's to do with perception. It's not necessarily that they look like shadows realistically. I think they look incredibly psychedelic and like clowns, personally. You already know what my opinion on this is. But I do think it depends on the individual's ability to perceive that other realm. Okay, and I do believe most people who encounter these entities have in some way experienced some kind of trauma. And it's this initial trauma that kickstarts their ability to see these entities. It's almost as though trauma in some way does something to a human's mind and perception, which makes them more perceptible to be able to visualize the spiritual realm, we'll call it, the fractal realm in some way. And it's the first step demons take to get into somebody, is to traumatize them, get them into that state of fear, that state of trauma. And it does seem like a surefire way of allowing the demons to get a foothold on an individual. So this seems to be the common link I've seen. In terms of my own trauma, why I saw the Hat Man, I realized this was during a time where I was heavily addicted to cannabis and psychedelic use. My veil was thin, basically, and my ability for these beings to interact with me was probably more capable than, let's say, somebody who hadn't opened up any of these gateways. There's sort of probably another way to describe it. But if you haven't done it through self-inflicted forms, then generational trauma is another great way for demons to kind of get a foothold into an individual. Now, I think the level in which you are traumatized or have messed with your perceptions, whether it's, like I said, on purpose or by accident, is the level in which you'll be able to see the entity manifest in reality. Now, other people in the same room may not be able to see what you can see, but that doesn't mean it's any less real from what you can actually perceive. I think what you perceive, like I said, if your veil is still relatively thick, but it's just been pierced, you'll see a projection of some kind of the form of the demon.
Right.
But it'll look shadowy and wispy and smoky, not quite there, not quite clear. And I do think the more you get traumatized, or the more you weaken your veil by accident or on purpose, the stronger that vision will become, and the less shadowy they'll become, and a lot more psychedelic they'll become, a lot more colorful, a lot more like the true serpentine-like, multicolored patterned, jester-like, wide-grinned form. Like I said, I think the shadow entities are like the first initial precursor to the ultimate form. It's just what you can vaguely perceive in the moment, but the more they can rattle you,
right?
I think the clearer they'll become. It seems to be the way.
Exactly.
Like I said, it wasn't a shadow entity for me. He was in full color when he came to me. Whoa. And that's hardly surprising, because for me, I'd already been to the DMT realm a few times, and I've been taking acid every other weekend, and taking mushrooms and the rest of it. I was on MDMA every weekend,
Man, you're pulling a Johnny Depp there, man.
That was my life at the time. I was a typical stereotypical art student in university, so it's hardly surprising, But that's what I think it is. But I think, people who have never even considered spiritual stuff, and just pretty, the average Joe who does a 9 to 5 and has a family, doesn't really partake in anything wild, they tend to, like I said, see shadow people. Maybe they've had a bad experience, or something terrible's happened, maybe the death of a family member or something, and it's just kind of jump starts their ability to start having these entities mess with them, if you get what I mean. Like I said, they tend to encounter shadow people, is what I've noticed. That's just my own observations. Now, in terms of the hierarchy of what these things are, like I said, I do believe the demonic realm has a hierarchy, just like we do, just like a military does. Right. They have generals, lieutenants, and grunts at the bottom, and they have majors and leaders. And I think the Hat Man is a high-ranking entity, a very high-ranking entity. Is it the devil? No, I don't think so. I think there are many Hat Men. And I also understand, as we'll get into later and we'll expand upon, shamans who commune with the spirit realm regularly and channel entities. You'll find that a common motif for a lot of them is a hat, and in particular, tall, wide-brimmed hat.
Right.
And I do think, as ancestor worshippers understand, you dress like the thing to channel the thing. So, you go, and if you want power, you go to the top. You don't ask the lowly demons. You go talk to the boss type of thing. So again, that's my initial interpretation of why shadows. What do you think of that? What's your opinion?
I think shadows are definitely disembodied spirits of more than likely the Nephilim. The Nephilim for me are all shapes and forms, and maybe there were giants and probably some other chimera type of creatures that didn't have the spirit of God breathed into them. It was just another spirit. And I'm along those lines. I think these entities are able to come into our reality. How they do it, that's still a question. I don't think anyone really knows that answer. But it seems they're able to, like you mentioned, some of them are formed of a mist. Some become solid. Like, for example, what my dad saw, my uncle saw. They seem solid and they seem, not misty, not imperfect, not, like a smoke cloud coming at you. I mean, these things you can see it. I mean, you couldn't see the face, but you can see the outline of the body. It wasn't all just distorted. It was, a perfect figure, like a man coming at you. And, from my experiences, seeing, these figures and, from dark entities standing in the hallway to headless ones. I mean, I don't know, Paul. I mean, the more episodes we go through, the stranger things get. But I think we're, by pulling these threads, we're getting a clearer understanding that I believe that when people get into these psychedelics and drugs, like, for example, many out there know of Aaron Rodgers. He was a quarterback of the Green Bay Packers, now the New York Jets. I read an article in I think it was 2020 or 2019. He took a trip, I think it was to Peru, and he took ayahuasca. And I believe the article says his girlfriend was some kind of witch. And since that time, he's been seeing the Hat Man with the dead rabbit in his hand, or a blade, or something along those lines. Dead rabbit. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know what the ramifications are with the imagery of a blade in the hand or a dead rabbit.
That sounds like the magicians, how they pull the rabbits out of the top hats. That sounds like a magician type of thing.
Yeah.
Is there any relation to that, Paul?
There is.
Oh, wow.
Like I said, I'll expand on this as we go on. Yes. I've got a lot of stuff to do with the clowns to link to all this Hatman character. And I was actually literally just thinking about magicians myself an hour ago.
Oh, cool.
I was just like a dead rabbit, the hat. Like, it sounds like magician stuff to me.
Oh, absolutely. Well, as I was saying, there are examples in movies people like me to reference, like popular culture, where there are these entities that manifest more and more as the film progresses, as the individual or the protagonist gets more and more scared. That seems to be the general theme that runs through it. And it's let me see. I wrote it down in my book here as an example. So the Mind Flayer from Stranger Things is a good example. That's a wispy, smoky entity in the Upside Down, like a spider-like, tornado-looking smoke monster.
Right.
And it preys on it gets more powerful in the ability to come into this world through mystical forms, but it preys on the fear of people, to pierce its way into our realm. Pennywise the Clown from Stephen King's It is a quintessential fear-feeding ghoul. It can manifest more and more physically into someone's life, the more scared it can get its victim. That's basically how it works. So its role is to become the victim's worst fear. The more fear it has, the more powerful it becomes, the more ability it has to manifest into the physical world, therefore gaining the ability to physically eat children. That's kind of its end goal. But its game is fear first, to gain the power. Freddy Krueger's another great example. Nightmare on Elm Street. It feeds on the fear of people within their dreams, and Freddy Krueger is actually a hat man. He wears his own fedora hat.
Yeah.
And he is a dream feeder of fear. His key role is to generate fear. It's a common theme. It's a trope in movies, and obviously I think it's a case of art mimicking life and reality. They know what they're talking about, the people who made these films. In terms of shadow entities, we have a Dementor from Harry Potter. And when someone encounters a Dementor, they literally have their souls sucked from their body, and they're usually paralyzed with fear. Mm-hmm. They have the Nazguls of Tolkien's Lord of the Ring universe, the black cloaked shadowy figures, who are chasing the hobbits at the beginning, and they ride dragons, funnily enough. A link there to the Serpentine bloodline, and where the origins of these things come from. So it's referenced quite a lot in media. So I'll say that about the shadow people and the entities alone. I do settle myself on, the only things in this realm are the many forms of ex-humans who turn themselves into corrupted beings, and the Nephilim themselves. Mm-hmm. And they came in all shapes and sizes. Think of fairy folk, gnomes, elves, trolls, goblins, centaurs, phoenixes, all the corrupted animals as well, all the messed up creatures, and not just giants. It's not just simply just giants. And they all kind of ended up very psychedelic and strange in form and nature. I mean, another famous one is the old hag from the past. That's actually some demented hobbit-like dwarf woman with elvish ears and, crooked bony fingers, who kind of sits on the chest of its victims and stops them from being able to breathe and keeps them paralyzed during sleep, And I think that the only way a demon can physically interact with our realm currently is to first generate fear. And the more fear it can generate in its individual target, the stronger it can seem to manifest. It's a huge process because they don't have physical bodies anymore. But what they can do is manifest enough to physically affect an individual by making them scared. And I don't know to what extent that can make them manifest into reality like the movies do. I don't know if that's just for the movies only or if it's reality, but I've heard stories of people having physical issues from it, being physically attacked by monsters in the physical world. I don't know. It's a tough one. In terms of history of the Hat Man and obviously the psychedelic realm, one thing I think I'll start with is to say I believe the Nephilim look like clowns, and I think everything to do with clown culture, including the circus in the West, was invented by Freemasonry as a way for them to create a way of dressing like demons in order to venerate demons in the public without the public realizing. So in the same way, tribes all around the world venerate their ancestor spirits, they call them, which are the Nephilim, basically.
Right.
They dress like them in their rituals, to channel them and to venerate them and to bring them into the physical world through their bodies, basically. And now they all dress like something like a clown, like a psychedelic, colorful monster, serpentine in nature and tall and psychedelic and covered in ribbons and frills and, these monstrous clown-like creatures. Now, they know what they're doing when they do it. And I think when the Freemasons invented the visage of a clown, they also knew what they were doing. And the circus itself is embedded with fractal realm symbology. So circuses, which were, as we first knew them, were actually equestrian horse shows in Britain. There was a ring which someone would ride a horse around in a circle and do backflips off of horses and jump from one horse to another and ride two horses at once while stood on, just do tricks on horses. And that's the proto circus. Around the similar time, we had clowning in theatre and pantomimes kind of becoming highly popular through Joseph Grimaldi. This is all 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s period. So there was this 100-year period from Grimaldi to then where the circus kind of became a big deal. Right. The clown became a big deal, and it was kind of co-opted by Freemasonry. They liked the image, and they really, really rolled with it and made it more and more Nephilim-esque as time went on, and incorporated it into these epic shows we called circuses around America. So think of Barnum and Bailey and the Ringling Bros. Mm-hmm. Every last one of them was a Freemason. and they were the first original circuses in America, and it was America that kind of popularized the circus as we know it. That's its original form. With the clowns and the rings and the ringmaster who wears the hat, and orchestrates the circus. All of that is a Freemason ritual on a grand scale. And it's in my book, actually. I've got, and this is referenced from another book, which is about the occult of Western art. And it basically says, Freemasons created this show, from these circuses, and they became a combined circus. And they put on this giant show, which was about King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Mm-hmm. And every single aspect of this traveling show at the time was produced through Freemason affiliates. So all the costumes were produced by a company, which doesn't exist anymore. But it was during that time, it was hired to create all the regalia and costumes for traditional Freemason rituals within lodges. And they made all the costumes for this show, because it wasn't difficult for them to make these costumes, because these are the same costumes Freemasons wear in their own rituals within lodges. Do you know what I mean? So they already kind of had them on hand. Mm-hmm. So these Freemasons who, worship are just a continuation of these serpent cults, antediluvian, post-diluvian serpent worship cults. And they believe they are the keepers of the seven sacred science and the knowledge, and they use that knowledge for power and gain and to further the agendas of demons they work for. And what they manage to do is basically, without people realizing it, is create a huge Freemasonic ritual on a grand scale in which the public pay to come and see. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of the more attention it gets, the more powerful the ritual is. So these circuses in their original form were literally Freemasonic satanic summoning rituals. And the cast were dressed like demons, like clowns, just like an ancestor worshipping cult would do. They would dance around their own fire circle, making noise and moving their feet and swaying to drums, in order to invocate and bring the demons to our realm. Well, that's exactly what the clowns were doing and the acrobats were doing in their psychedelic shiny clothing, the serpent skin clothes, and the demon garb, which is a clown garb. They may have been acting silly to try and hide their intentions, but the effects are the same thing as what these ancestor cults do. So on a mass scale, these demons were being summoned, and who's in the center of the ring summoning the demons? Well, it's the Hat Man. It's the ringmaster. Now, the ringmaster could be a subtle reference, first of all, to King Solomon, who did use a ring gifted to him by God to subdue the demons. And he also used those demons to build his temple. Solomon is a huge character in Freemasonry. They love the guy. They have done everything they can during this time period in the 1800s to rebuild Solomon's temple under many different forms and guises. This was pre-Depression era, pre-collapse era, so there was a lot of money going about, and the Freemasons were pretty haughty about it. And they were building odes to Solomon's temple left, right, and center all over America at this time. So Solomon's a big deal, and he is the original ringmaster, the master of the ring, the lord of the ring, who subdued the demons under his will. But not only that, within the Freemason halls, within these rituals, the worshipful Grand Master, so the head of the lodge, is the only one permitted to wear a black top hat. No one else is allowed to wear one. And that is a symbol of his authority and power within the lodge. So the ringmaster of the circus is the Grand Master of the ritual within the Freemason halls. It's the same character, just manifested and reflected into this circus allegory. So what the circus is something for the public to see and not realize they're watching a ritual. It's just a bit of fun for the family. That's as far as they need the profane masses to see it. But the people who are in the know, the initiated, they know that they're going to see a ritual on a grand scale, a demon summoning ritual. Mm-hmm. And our circuses, at this day and age, they're dying out.
Yeah,
they're not as popular as they used to be. It's not what it used to be anymore. And also they've kind of changed with time and they're a bit more toned down now. The Freemason influence has kind of dissipated out of it. And now we have like this empty shell of its original potent form, when it was first initially done. And I think the true circus now, the true place of the clowns, and the true summoning rituals have been moved over to media and film and movies. I'd say the last grand circus that exists in the world, which still does this type of thing to the level of summoning demons, is probably Cirque du Soleil or Circus of the Sun.
Okay.
And they still put on these grand shows, and you can decode all of their posters and all the artwork for these shows, and it's demonic to the core. And all the symbolism I've shown on my channel is all there, blatant for them to see. If they're not really hiding their intentions, if you have the eyes to see it. So maybe that could be the last Freemason stronghold, ritualistic on a grand scale circus format that still exists in the modern day.
Right.
But in the past, in this 1900s, early 1900s, late 1800s period, those circuses, they were a big deal to the initiated. They were serious events, but to the uninitiated, it was just a bit of fun for the family. Very clever.
I never got into circuses. I don't know. I just didn't like them.
No, well, I'm not surprised. I mean, I think we're all naturally averted to clowns. I made these videos, on my channel, basically trying to say, like, what were these people thinking in the past, thinking that these clowns were cute and fun and for children? They're absolutely terrifying. Especially then, the way people dressed like clowns back then, it was the most horrific thing you've ever seen. And it's kind of, you see all these black and white photos of children screaming their eyes and crying while this clown's holding them and laughing and staring in the face.
You're right.
And all the parents, they're like, oh, isn't it cute? Oh, isn't it fun? And it's kind of like, no, it's not fun. That child is having a severe panic attack and a traumatic experience. It's like the people at the time were just utterly unaware of the psychological impact they were having on these children.
I guess
I don't know if they were naive, evil, or just stupid. I don't know which one it was, but it's just silly, So in terms of the Hat Man, we're talking about the Hat Man here today. He plays a key role within the circus ritual, and it has direct links and ties to Freemasonry at its core. And if the Freemasons, work with the demons, it can hardly be surprising that the highest ranking person within the lodge would be the Hat Man. Basically, a representation of a high-ranking demon in the spiritual realm. So they mirror it, and like I said, they, just like ancestor worship cults do, the Freemasons in their own rituals dress like the thing to evoke the thing and be possessed by the thing. So this Hat Man character is a big player, like I was saying earlier.
Mm-hmm. Definitely a big player. And there's always a Hat Man in the circuses too. Go ahead.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of that occult leader, Aleister Crowley. He's often many pictures with him wearing a hat, that top hat, all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we talked about magicians earlier as well. Magicians basically dress like a grandmaster of Freemasonry.
Yeah, with the rabbit.
That's the stereotypical magician's garb. The waistcoat, the black suit with the tails at the back, the black top hat, and like you said, they're magicians, the stereotype magician with the black and white wand, with the top hat, pulling rabbits out of the hat, and making flowers appear from the sleeves and the endless tissues and stuff, which are kind of circus clownish acts to begin with, but it's kind of like a tongue-in-cheek reference to that Freemasons are basically wizards. That's what they are. They're dark warlocks, that's what they believe themselves to be. They believe that they have occult knowledge and power. They are spellcasters, and they are occultists. They work with the occult. They are quintessentially magicians, and that's why the stereotypical magician's garb is basically a Grand Master of Freemasonry. It's the same costume, but it's kind of just, again, dumbed down for the kids. You know what I mean? Right. It's occulted for the masses to not realize that that's what's going on. Mm-hmm. But that's the stereotype costume of your average magician in the past. It's the one they put on the box of your magician's kit for kids. That's the image they put down, the caricature of a magician. But yeah, it's just basically just a worshipful master of Freemasonry. It's kind of, it's in your face once you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'd say.
Absolutely. The Hat Man has been seen, like you're saying, all across the world. People see this entity, and I wonder if they're associated with UFO sightings. I'm trying to remember if I read some stories about that or not. Not too sure.
I've not heard anything about UFO sightings myself. No, I mean, the only aspects I've looked into about, I'm not saying that it hasn't happened, by the way. I believe we're all dealing with the same entities, whether it's aliens, demons, or whatever, or people. It all comes under the same umbrella for me. I come at it from a tautological perspective, an all-encompassing tautology, I'm kind of done trying to give it different names for the same thing. I do believe it all comes under the same umbrella. So it wouldn't surprise me if within alien abduction stories, some kind of Hatman-like entity would appear. It really wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, they're always, there are different shapes and different sizes. Some say they're 6 foot tall. Some say they take up the space of the room, as far as height goes, 8 foot, 10 foot. So they come in various sizes. Some say their eyes are, like you were saying, yellow. Some are red.
Mm-hmm.
And all these freaky features that people, explain what they have witnessed when they encountered the Hat Man. And I'm wondering if, other than psychedelics, DMT, and ayahuasca, I wonder if there's any family lineage that causes people to see these things, like generational, voodoo or shamanism, or obviously Freemasonry.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah. So on voodoo, for example, you've already hit the nail on the head there. Going straight to the point with it. So Haitian voodoo, for example, it's actually a strange mix. It's a relatively new religion. It's believed that the Haitian people made a deal with the devil in order to kick out the oppressors at the time, and it's basically a cursed people who live with the devil, is what it's perceived as. Now, there's a massive Christian culture now in Haiti. Which is prevalent, and they all say, the Christians, they're basically just demon worshippers, the Haitian voodoo people, and they've corrupted our country basically. So they take it very seriously, the Christians, just as seriously as the occultist voodoos take their religion in Haiti. It's actually a real spiritual war for them happening live. You know what I mean? And it's no joke to them that they have no two ways about it. It's either you're with Jesus or you're with the demons. And some people do prefer the demons over Jesus there quite powerfully, So the religion of the Haitian Voodoo, it's called. It's Voudou. Voodoo is actually the New Orleans Americanized version.
Oh, okay.
But Voodoo is the core of the Haitian religion, where it comes from. Now, these people who were brought over here to this place are from actually the Yoruba tribes within, I think it's northwestern Africa, Nigeria region. But the Yoruba people cover many countries within Africa, but they're like a particular culture within Africa, the Yoruba tribes. And they have these ancestor spirit worship religions, which kind of got brought over across to Haiti in the Americas region. But it also got mixed with, obviously, Western Freemasonry at the time. Catholicism as well, which was rich in the land, and the original people who owned that place. I think it was the Spanish originally there in Haiti.
I believe so.
I forget. I don't know if it's the Portuguese or the Spanish, but either way, the
Conquistadors.
The Conquistadors, yeah, that's it. So obviously they had strong Catholic ties and religions there. They had Freemasonry had its foothold in that region as well, along with these bizarre African cultures and tribes, and it all kind of got amalgamated into one religion, which we call Voodoo. Now, the Haitians who were left behind with this use Freemasonic symbols like the square and the compass in their own sigils that they create for their own invocation rituals. And lo and behold, the main characters, they have a pantheon of gods they called Iwas, and the Iwas are basically like they have their roots in the same gods from the Yoruba tribes, but they've been changed a little bit for the Haitian culture with the Catholicism and everything else. So, for example, they follow Saint John the Baptist as well, but they've kind of occulted him into this mythical character, which is associated with kind of like a psychopomp nature of guiding souls in the afterlife, this type of thing. It's kind of like an occult witchcraft, Catholic, African ancestor worship, Freemasonry all mashed together. Oh, wow. It's a real messed up religion. Okay.
That's a big old tongue twister.
It really is, yeah. But basically, you'll find that they have these Iwas, and the main ones are Papa LEGBA and Baron Samedi. Now, these two characters, which are kind of like the main patriarchs of this spiritual ghost family they worship, they're matriarchal as well in the culture. They're quite strong with the matriarchs. They have their own female goddesses, but these two particular powerful male goddesses, which is like the father figure and his son. Baron Samedi is infamous for wearing a tall black top hat with a Freemason purple garb. He basically looks like the Hat Man that came to me in my dream. And he also has a skeleton face. He loves to drink rum and smoke cigars. And what you'll find these Haitian cultures do when they summon Baron Samedi is they will dress with a top hat and a suit, and they will smoke cigars and drink rum. And it's an offering to him because that's what he enjoys having. And then they'll claim to be possessed by him and then black out and not remember the experience. And they'll basically be walking around, smoking the cigar, drinking the rum. But it's this spirit that's now taken over them, basically. Enjoying the cigar and drinking the rum. And the vessel, the person who summoned them, will have no recollection of it. And then they claim that they get gifts for this, knowledge, power, and the ability to kill their enemies, that type of thing, spiritual power, whatever they want. So, resolutions to family conflict. There's always promises. There's always something. There's always a carrot on the end of the string, to keep people doing it. But it's essentially no different than what the African cultures do when they wear the ritualistic ancestor garb to summon the entity. It's so the entity can enjoy the pleasures of the flesh. And all they need is somebody stupid enough to summon them. And they'll come up with any image or way of getting the person to do that. But you'll find a Hat Man, inspired by the Freemasonic angle, is summoned regularly in this culture, in this tribe. So Papa LEGBA is another example.
That's wild.
Another example is this, like I said, is Papa LEGBA. I've got some information on him here, actually. So this is where Papa LEGBA is said to be like a caring patriarchal version in Voodoo. He's also there as a communicator between the big God and the people. He communicates on behalf of the dead and the living. Do you get what I mean? He's like a messenger of some kind. And this is based on Ishu, or LEGBA, or LEGBA, which is in the Yoruba tribe's original African culture.
Aruba.
So I've got a passage here online. So LEGBA is a trickster god of the Yoruba people of Nigeria and West Africa. He is unpredictable, sly, fond of pranks, and can be cruel and disruptive. Ishu, or LEGBA, who knows all the languages spoken on the earth, serves as a messenger between the gods and the people. He also carries up to heaven the sacrifices that people offer to the gods. According to one story, Ishu became a messenger after playing a trick on the high god. He stole potatoes or yams from the god's garden, used the god's slippers to make footprints there, and then suggested that the god had stolen the yams himself. Annoyed, the high god ordered Ishu to visit the sky every night and tell him what happened on earth during the day. So he's a mischievous trickster figure, and he appears in many forms. He's a shapeshifter, and he appears obviously across many different people all across Africa. And that's basically him. He enjoys confusion. Many stories tell of tricks he plays that cause arguments between friends or between husbands and wives. In one myth, he lured the sun and the moon into changing places to upset the cosmic order. He is the god of change, chance, uncertainty. Ishu is sometimes paired with Ifa, a god representing order in the African Yoruba culture. And in one of these tales, it's saying, haha, you can't kill me, because if you kill me, you kill yourself. You can't have chaos without order. It's that type of thing. So they have the whole dualistic black and white angle going on there, which is typical of the Nephilim religions when they existed. This sounds to me like this trickster god is a lesser Nephilim. The Nephilim were known to be basically people who communicated with the pantheons or the fallen angels on earth. They were the earthly foot soldiers of the heavenly watchers. And this Ishu character, or Papa LEGBA, which has been incorporated into modern Voodoo, Haitian Voodoo, as well as this original African tribe, he sounds to me like he is a messenger between the gods and the people. So he is a bit above humans, but a little bit below the gods, small g. So that's basically the Nephilim, which are a little bit more than human, but below the angels who created them.
Right.
It's the same thing, just with a different name, a different style. And actually, if you look and just type in Ishu into Google, I have some pictures here, but you can find these wooden carvings of this character, and he has a really long skull in all of them, and big wide eyes and long serpent-like features on the face, and they always depict him having an incredibly elongated skull. So this Papa LEGBA, which has its roots all the way back to Africa, is basically a Nephilim. And those who dress it with like him, and he dresses very similar to Baron Samedi, as I mentioned earlier, the top hat wearing, suit wearing, cigar smoking, rum drinking skeleton man. That's also how Papa LEGBA looks, very similar. So you dress like this Hatman character, you are channeling this ancient African Nephilim god of some kind who was just like their father. He's a trickster. He's a liar. He's irreverent, just like their parents, the fallen angels, the rebellious angels. So that's the Voodoo angle of the Hatman, and as you can see, it has its roots all the way into ancestor worship of the Nephilim.
Yeah, looking at these images on Google,
it's grotesque. It's like an alien.
Yeah,
like there's one where like his head is so long.
These are just people, you know what I mean? These are just ancient humans who existed that got so great in stature. We made carvings of them, but you look at them, it's like that's not a human.
A lot of these images though, it has like 4 long like spaghetti arms or like tentacles. Is that?
Oh yeah.
What is that like?
Idea, but these things came in many shapes and forms, and they were mixed with other animals. And during that time when the Nephilim were around, there was the mixing of kinds. There was a mixing of animals with other animals, with humans with animals, all sorts of things going on. All flesh was becoming corrupt, all taught how to be done by the fallen angels, and these Nephilim, their children and the potentates on the earth. So I wouldn't surprise me that these things look wild in visage. They're not human, and serpent-like features would have manifested on the Nephilim, absolutely, inherited from the seraphim, serpent-like parents. So you just see these old wooden carving depictions of this one particular god in Africa, and you'll see, it's just another Nephilim, just another serpent man of some kind.
It's ugly.
Yeah,
those things are really nasty. I was reading a blog. It's a North Atlantic blog on WordPress. Says just a little snippet. This is when Hatman does appear, the witness is usually sleeping in the early morning hours, although users of the Ouija board have also described encountering the Hatman as well as alleged victims of alien abductions.
So interesting.
So that's, if these things are associated with alien abductions, you know what? I just think that, and this is just a hypothesis, I think these shadow people, these hat men, I think they're the way I see it is some of these biologics, these entities people see, they want to call them aliens. I think they're just host bodies that were created. And I think these Nephilim spirits indwelt them. And I think these shadow people maybe leave that body and come and harass people, or somehow they take a form of a hat man or once again, a shadow person. And somehow, some way they're able to, I don't think it's, maybe physically they're taken to a craft, or maybe their spirit is pulled out of them and taken to the craft. I don't know about that, because I'm just kind of 50-50 on that, because some people do exhibit implants and they have scars. So that's my take on it. I think that the Nephilim spirits indwelt some of these biologic, they're in the insectoids or the so-called elder race brothers, or these other entities. I think they're all indwelt spirits with the Nephilim. I think some of these bodies are for me, in my opinion, I think these bodies are created, these so-called extraterrestrials that are probably terrestrial. They probably always have been here on the earth. They're just in another reality of our earth. That's the way I say. I don't think they're planetary species. I'm leaning towards they're terrestrial. They've always been here.
I've heard that theory a lot lately in the Telegram group, and from people who leave me comments about it. It seems to the most popular train of thought is that these greys, these alien greys or whatever they are, whatever the form they come in, are just some kind of genetically engineered vessel of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a sexless androgynous vessel that can't reproduce, you know?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and they're just basically there for the spirits to inhabit, and it's a perfect place for them to be where the Holy Spirit can't dwell and kick them out, you know? Maybe there's a limited supply of these vessels, though, so they have to kind of share. And there's all sorts I could speculate about that idea, you know, and it does seem likely there's something like that going on. Because, you know, people who have alien abduction stories, they claim they had a very physical experience. You know, they weren't just dreaming. They were being touched and felt by these things, you know, and moved around. And it wasn't just simply you know, maybe it was just a dream or I was just seeing things type of situation, you know. I think I've heard someone theorizing as well that these vessels do feed by rubbing adrenochrome fueled cow's blood onto them, something like that, which explains why they have all these mutilated cows from these abduction stories, because they were mutilated to put them through pain to create the adrenochrome. I don't know about that, but just running with the idea and the topic, you know, I've heard all sorts about it. It's definitely like I said, we need to pull on these threads.
We do,
because extraterrestrials is not the answer.
No, it's not.
And we need to consider we need to answer though, how come people are seeing grey aliens?
Grey aliens, yeah.
You know? We do have to answer that question, have a sufficient answer for them if it's demons, you know, and if they are a physical thing really flying around in some kind of craft.
Well,
then we need to consider that, you know, maybe they are a created being, but not necessarily the spirit that's within them changes.
There was
depending on what's available.
There was a documentary by a few years ago by Justin Fall, and he mentioned that a group called the Collins Elite, a secret government group in the United States, did their research on UFOs and these so-called aliens, and they came back with their conclusion that they are demonic.
Yeah.
And some feel that the U.S. government and other governments of the world have been working with these entities, especially since Eisenhower, when he was in Palm Springs back in, I don't know, I want to say the 50s. He made an agreement with the Greys over technology. And then you get into the whole people being abducted, women, their babies being taken. And you get that into, you tie that into Satanism, where they actually do abortions as a sacrifice to Satan, and they have breeders that sacrifices. And the reason why I say that is because, you know, these babies are being taken from women by these so-called extraterrestrials. How do we not know they're being sacrificed to Satan? And you tie that all in with the Hat Man appearing, allegedly, according to the blog. And I'm sure there's other blogs talking about people seeing the Hat Man along with, you know, alien abductions. It makes you wonder how this all ties into Freemasonry, the Freemasons and Satanism and UFOs and all this secret stuff, all this dark secrets that, you know, are veiled over this world, and that these governments know about it because they have these crash things. And you know, I heard one story that a guy went into a craft, and a military guy, and it had strange writing on it, and he didn't know what it was. And a scientist told him, that's Enochian. He said, what do you mean? You know, he says, that's the language of the angels.
He said the language of the demons too. Yeah,
also language of the demons. So, I mean, man, you know, we're getting deeper into a rabbit hole here. You have the Hat Man, you have Satanism, you have the Freemasons. It's just, it keeps going. All these threads, the more you pull, the longer the thread gets.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting you were saying there about, you know, the abortion angle, where when they kill this baby, it's actually a sacrifice to Satan they're really doing, you know. And I think you were mentioning there, you know, in these alien abduction stories where something similar might be happening, you know, where they're impregnating women, then maybe taking the baby away. So this Hat Man present. And if you think about the Hat Man, as I said, symbolically in Freemason being the leader or the orchestrator of the ritual, And maybe the Hat Man needs to be present when this sacrifice happens in order to make it official in some way or to channel it in the correct way. I don't know. And then we're considering that the lead head shamans within Voodoo culture, who have the snake around their neck and they channel Baron Samedi, this Hat Man, top hat wearing entity, to orchestrate the ritual, the witch doctor ritual type of thing in Voodoo culture and Voodoo culture. Now, let's bear that in mind, and let's consider some other cultures that also have the Hat Man as the head shaman. Okay, and the shamans, like I said, are the anointed leader of the spiritual process in which they channel the entity. Okay, that's what the whole purpose of a shaman is within these cultures. So if we go to the Guahanas regions of the west coast of Canada, there's an archipelago of islands called Guahanas, I think it is. Guahanas. Gwaiihanas.
Close enough.
And, yeah, this archipelago of islands is home to the what are they called? There's an Indian tribe there, and they are also the Gwai something. Okay, let's just say the tribes of the Guahanas region. We'll just say that for now. I can't remember off the top of my head the actual name, but it's something similar. And they basically have totem poles all over the place. Okay, and they have some amazing looking totem poles which stack these animals on top of each other with white skin, red lips, clown-like features galore. And these animal human hybrid-like creatures all up and down these totem poles. But they also have on the top of these totem poles human beings that wear these incredibly long, tall, striped, patterned top hats. And they're very full hats, okay? And you'll find that the shaman in these tribes, they also wear a top hat while doing their invocation rituals to their ancestor spirits. And they twirl and twirl while wearing this hat. And they believe each segment of the hat that goes down in the stripes channels the entity closer and closer down towards their mind, where they can then summon the ritual. And you hear these old testimonies of people who witnessed the ritual claiming there's light coming out of the hat on each level as it comes down. You get these campfire stories about the true mystical nature of this dance, and that's what it seems the hat was used for in that ritual particularly. It was a key tool used to channel an entity into the vessel from the ether, kind of like an antenna in a way.
Interesting.
So that opens up the meaning towards why a hat at all. Consider something like a wizard, a quintessential witch or wizard, and the hat. They always wear this conical shaped, floppy, pointy, wide rimmed hat in some way. And I've heard people speculate that the cone shape of the hat is to direct the magical energy more directly into the skull or into the brain or into the mind. Kind of like an antenna in some way, a spiritual energy harvester of some kind. So there is that one tribe, like I said, in the Americas, which has a very distinct type of top hat, which I thought was interesting and worth bringing up. It's annoying me right now that I can't find the name off the top of my head. I'm going to have to Google it. Give me 1 second. Guaihanas tribe. Let's just see what it comes up with. The Haida Gwaii. That's what they're called. Okay, the Haida Gwaii people. So type in Haida Gwaii shaman, and it should just come up. Haida Gwaii. But the sad thing is they're dying out as a people. There's not many left of them now. They're getting quite westernized. So I think what we would see this day and age,
they're dying out eating McDonald's. Yeah,
what we'd see this day and age are a lot more watered down from the original culture.
Right.
But yeah, unfortunately, nothing's coming up for shaman. Let me have a look. I know they have some very old photos of the original people that visited them, and they look like they're just wearing shawls right now. But there's one I can see one here on a sculpted boat wearing the top hat that I was mentioning. So you can find examples of it, but the main examples of just how tall these hats actually were on the totem poles themselves. They've carved it within their artwork to memorialize these ancient shamans type of thing. And yeah, they're very weird looking things. So there's that example. But then let's say we go to the other side of the world, let's go all the way to Korea now. Okay. So we've crossed the Pacific and we're now in Korea. Okay. Different culture, different history, different land, different peoples, different language, different everything. Okay. Not the same peoples.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they have a thing called a madang, and that is their form of a shaman. And these madangs they wear long, flowing pink or blue coats of some kind of their equivalent of a trench coat, like an Asian equivalent of a trench coat, you know.
Right.
And they also wear a very tall, wide-brimmed, pink, flower-covered top hat. And they have feathers coming off it and all sorts of things. And these within the cultures, the madangs are outliers. Okay. They get hired. They're actually feared by the people in a way. You can't become a madang by choice. All madangs claim that they reluctantly got made to be one by the spirits, because what usually happens is they experience some extreme trauma of some kind, which breaks them, and they end up having like PTSD or something like that. Maybe they lose their husband in a horrific event or something. The majority of them are women. I'll have to say that first of all. So, you know, some kind of tragic, horrible event happens in their life, and then the spirits come to them and tell them that they now need to be a channel. They need to be a madang. And that's what they end up giving everything up for and becoming. And now these madangs are hired by wealthy people and paid a lot of money to come to their homes to perform private rituals. And in these rituals, the madang, or the shaman woman, puts on this garb, does a very specific dance and process and humming and singing and music with very specific blood sacrifices of meat and money. A lot of things have to be sacrificed. And then this madang will end the ritual by being possessed by the spirit. Okay. And it's expected that this happens at the end of the ritual. That's what the people are paying for. And then the person who paid the madang to do this asks the spirit for advice on something specific. Financial advice, family relationship advice, how to solve interpersonal quarrels and problems. Basically, it's like a human version of an Ouija board. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that the madang, the shaman particularly, they dress like the Hat Man. Very specific costume. You can type it in. You know, just type in MUDANG Korea, and you'll see it straight away. Madang Korea. But yeah, these, like I said, these are basically the same thing that happened, you know, in the North Americas or in Africa or anywhere that shamanism exists. They are the channel for the spirits, and you know, people who don't know any better basically think they are talking to their ancestors.
Makes you wonder, you know, it makes you wonder how old is the tall hat. I mean, when I think about antiquity, I don't think about tall hats, but who knows? Maybe in the spiritual realm. Well, you know what, Paul? I don't even know if it's spiritual. I think it's a physical realm, because when you read the Bible that the angels came and they ate and they drank, you know, why wouldn't these things be physical too? But somehow they're able to transition to our world and they can manifest themselves as physical beings. So I don't know. It's just, there's a lot that we need to try to understand. Yeah. I'm looking at that image you mentioned about the Madang in Korea. Yeah. I can see that. And it's funny because the imagery is all over the world, you know, the tall hat and these encounters and worship. And so I don't know. I mean, the tall hat must be an ancient symbol going far beyond than what we think.
I believe so. I think it's far older than we're meant to believe. People always, every time I talk about this, someone in the chat or the comments always mentions that if you're into the Tartaria stuff, it seems like the top hat was a huge fashion choice during this reset period, they always say. There were these men walking around in top hats with canes everywhere in these mud and they're covered cities type of thing. There's pictures of all these top hat wearing people and these entities. So I don't know about that myself, you know, but it might be worth just mentioning for posterity about that, so no one brings it up in the chat, because there's always somebody. But the idea that the top hat was a huge fashion choice at one point in you know, Victorian history makes you think as well, to be honest, because if this is a channeling thing, you know, whether you know it, that's what it is or not, but if it is a tool used to directly communicate with the spirit realm, what would the effect of hundreds and thousands of people in a city wearing one have on the city and the culture, you know?
That's weird.
Would these people be channeling them without even realizing it, you know? And it was a highly spiritually charged time You know, it's when things like seances were really popular, you know, and consorting with mystics and crystal balls and scrying mirrors and all that sort of thing was happening around the same time, you know. So just it's like I said, wearing the costume of a clown. You might think you're having a bit of fun, but what you're really doing is putting on the skin of a Nephilim, you know, and you're allowing the spirits in. Whether you're aware of it or not, that's what's happening.
Well, that's interesting.
So,
that's interesting.
You know, all these people wearing top hats. What kind of effect did it have at the time? Just yeah. Sorry, go ahead. I'm just speculating.
No, I mean, because you can have things. You can have you know, it could be. You can have objects that can be possessed with the spirit, and we talked about that with different people who are into that realm. Like Dr. Gallagher and Danny Fergalti and Vicky Joy Anderson, they speak about how certain objects that you hold can be infused with evil. If it's like a book on necromancy or, you know, anything that's talking about evil stuff, you know, or a sculpture of an owl or something, you know, Cocopelli or something that, you know, that represents the fallen world, that it can be endowed with the spirit. It can be charged. So maybe you're right. You know, these hats are like antennas. Maybe these objects, these hats are endowed with the spirit that can communicate. And you're going back into history where, you know, men back in those times, Victorian times, or, you know, thousands and thousands of people wearing these hats, and maybe a lot of them were Masons, and maybe they are, you know, acting like a large antenna to the other world.
Mm-hmm. Well, Masons, you know, are basically being trained to be shamans in a way, a very westernized version of one,
right.
You know, but basically what they're doing, you know, that's why they do these rituals and learn this knowledge. It's to commune with the spirit realm, you know. They're just posh, rich, glorified shamans, you know, a very westernized version of it. Like I said earlier, they consider themselves wizards, you know. The grand worshipful master, you know, it sounds like a wizard to me. Just saying it, you know, they know what they're doing. Yeah, like I said, whether you know what you're doing or not, I think you need to be careful about what you choose to wear. I think that's mainly the main takeaway from all my research at the end of the day. Because I know a lot of people, like I said, they wear these things because they think it looks smart.
Yeah.
They dress like a clown because they're trying to entertain the kids because they think it's what kids like. You know, I think a lot of naivety goes behind a lot of these things. But it's unfortunate. It's the way the law works. You know, ignorance of the law doesn't make you immune to the law, unfortunately. And it wouldn't surprise me if, you know, Freemasons ruled the world. Let's say, you know, that's an all-encompassing thing. I know there's many subsections of secret societies and different orders and levels, not just Freemasonry. But if they did have much influence and control over society, it wouldn't surprise me if they would make the fashion choice of the time a particular highly charged spiritual tool, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe that we're seeing the same thing today. You know, the fashion industry hasn't really changed in terms of a weapon. Clothes today come through the catwalks are ridiculous, very clownish, you know, very outrageous and dehumanizing. And what goes through the catwalks, a diluted, more relatively normal version, eventually hits the high streets.
Right.
You know, it's downwind, you know, downstream of the high streets, isn't it? And you'll find right now that clowncore is the in fashion. This moment, you know, the start of this year, that was the clowncore was running down. People dressed like clowns was going down the highest end fashion runways. You know,
It is.
Yeah. So it's the same thing back in the day, though. The high end fashion then that was the top hat. You know.
Yeah.
And we already know that also has deep occult ties as well. So it's kind of the same game, just with a slightly different veneer. You know, as time progresses, the game changes with it, type of thing. Yeah, but it's fun to think about. Absolutely terrifying as well.
After our first podcast, now that I'm out in the streets, you know, I look around and I see, you know, I'm not putting anyone down. I'm not judging anyone. I'm just examining, observing. And I see some women with all this makeup on their face. And I just, you know, I'm sorry, Lord forgive me, but, you know, I say to myself, clown. I mean, overly done. It's just, you know, I look at this and you're right about, you know, the circuses today, they're dying out. However, when you're mentioning about the catwalks and people dressing more like clowns, and now the whole world is becoming a circus. The
Basically,
circus,
it's Clown
the
World
world.
now,
Yeah.
since 2016, right? It's been Clown World. The circus has externalized itself. It's no longer in
has.
these little secret little meetings anymore for the paying few. It's now worldwide. We are living within the circus on the earth, and I think the veil is getting thinner between the spiritual realm these things reside and our own world. And I think we're seeing more and more manifestations of spiritually influenced people than ever before. I call them the multicolored collective on my own work to try and hide from the algorithm. But we have this particular liberal leaning bent group of people, who claim to be fighting for social justice. And, you find that their flag is the multicolored rainbow and they dress like clowns, and you have to wonder what the spirit behind this movement truly is when you see what they're actually wearing. Now, I don't think they're wearing that because they think it looks good. I think they're wearing it because the demon within them is trying to make themselves manifest physically through them.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're truly seeing there. And it sounds ridiculous to say that to a secular-minded person, and probably to those people as well. They wouldn't believe me, but you have to test the spirits, and you understand what these people fight for is purely evil when you actually think about it. Then the spirit within them has to be demonic in some nature, and we will see manifestations of the spirit within them manifest physical through the host. That's just how it works. So what do? They dye their hair a crazy block color. They dehumanize themselves. They mutilate their bodies. They pierce themselves. They tattoo themselves, and they make themselves look as far away from human and more like a clown than you could really imagine. And that's the serpent within them. Yeah. That's the multicolored fractal demonic jester clown demon within them manifesting physically.
I feel like you're describing this person that I've seen online. He's like,
there's hundreds of them, unfortunately. They're all kind of clones of each other.
No, but there's like this guy very specifically. He literally has his face tattooed like a clown, and he claims to be a believer in Jesus, and he's just literally dressed up like a clown. He's out here in California. I don't know if you ever heard of him or not, but
I think we touched on that.
I've heard of him. I'm very well aware of him. I've been watching him since his inception before he blew up.
What do you think about this?
I personally reached out to the man, and he has not answered any of my emails or got back in touch. I've told him all about my work, and I was as sincere and as honest and as open with him as I possibly could be. I've given him the benefit of the doubts if he is a genuine born again or not. But so far, I haven't seen anything substantial to make me think he isn't actually just some kind of in it for the money type of person, or has it, or at the very least, being generous, maybe he just has a long way to go in his walk yet. There's a lot of worldly things still yet he needs to let go of. And it's a long, hard process, coming to Christ fully and burning away the old self for the new. And he may have a lot of things yet he is still clinging on to that he's afraid to let go of, because who is he if he is not the clown barber of California? He has those questions to ask. No, he has those real questions.
No,
he needs to ask himself, who am I? Who am I if I am not Richie the Barber?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Who am I if I am not the guy who dresses like a clown? He needs to, that it is his identity. It's, and it's not going to be easy for him to just let that go.
No.
It isn't, and you better believe the demons are not going to let it go either.
No.
This guy's influence. He can be a very useful tool for the demons, and unfortunately, the longer he holds on to that persona, he's still holding on to those demons, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. We were going to have him on our show too, and I went back and forth with him. And you want to tell a story?
No, go ahead. No,
and so, he said, wow, he says, he sent me a text message on Messenger. He says, I got to get paid. Just really blunt. Not like, hey, brother, can you help my ministry? Can you, donate a little bit? No, I got to get paid. And he was on another podcast it was a few months ago. And I said, well, did they pay you? He says, I ain't arguing with you. And he basically just cut me off. Says, I don't want to be on your show. I'm like, wow. I mean, it was really rude. I'm just summarizing it.
And you also mentioned that, like a lot of other people who believe in Christ have came on our podcast who are, no offense, a lot more popular and a lot more knowledgeable than he is. And they didn't charge us $1 for it because it's all about spreading the word. and spreading the gospel. And he just kind of laughed it off as like we're a joke, But
yeah, I mentioned.
I'm not the one that looks like a clown, so
Yeah, I mentioned specifically Dr. Richard Gallagher, clinical psychologist, New York, who's been doing this for 30, 35 years in demonic possession with the likes of Father Malachi Martin and some other Catholic exorcists. And this guy's a full-fledged, PhD, MD. And I mentioned him to this clown guy, and he just laughed it off like, okay, this is just a big joke. So, I mean, coming from that point of view, all we can do is pray for the guy, but, he does have a lot of work to do. And in my opinion, I think that he needs to let go of the worldly stuff, which is money. And if he's doing deliverances, I don't wholeheartedly believe that it's deliverance. Because understand, speaking with these various people we've interviewed, these people who are really highly intelligent and really know what they're doing when it comes to deliverance or exorcists, if you're Catholic, that you have to be pure of heart to do this. And a man or a woman who are holding on to worldly things, you can tell by their looks or what they have in their heart. How can a Nephilim deliver a person from a Nephilim?
And the Bible also says, people always say, it's not about how I look. It's not about this. It's not about, my clothing, how I dress, but it is, because the Bible says, you show your loyalty by your fruits. And to me, the fruits is also what's on the outside. Like, for example, if I meet someone on the street and they have, they're dressed, with a bunch of piercings and, they're all wearing a bunch of satanic, rock band shirts, based off what I see without knowing you. I mean, I don't know you. To me, the last thing I think you would believe is in God. The Bible says, show your fruits. It doesn't say show your roots. So, you also have to be different from the world. And that, to me, that's by the way you dress, by the way you look. You can't be part of this world. And that's just, what I get from the book, the Bible. Yeah,
well, in Rich's defense, he has tattooed himself. There's not much he can actually do to change that now. There's very little he can actually do about that.
Yeah, just
so he is going to have a very tough time to convince us otherwise.
Yeah.
If that's how we're going to see it. I would like to, like I said, assume ignorance before malevolence here. Yeah, right. I hope he is sincere and he might at least believe he's doing the work of God. I hope so. And like I said, maybe it's just going to be a long process for him of letting go of a lot of things. And it's a painful process. We've all had to go through it, We've all had worldly addictions and things we've had to kind of fight, and through the grace of God and the help of Jesus, we've beat it to the best we can. I still have an issue with caffeine, I think. That's probably my last thing I need to deal with, but I've been there. I've got tattoos myself, I've been a drug addict and all this type of thing. So I'd like not to judge as much as I can, exactly. But so far, like I said, I've seen very low effort to actually change
for him.
So far.
Well,
I would hope we can see more, but I have yet to see that personally. And I don't imagine. The thing is, a lot of people follow him now. It's like you say, he's casting out demons. And he's talking. I watched one of his recent videos, and he was talking about how a person just came to him when he was at his barber shop, shook his hand, and then started crying and says, I've got demons and all this type of thing. And he's saying how he cast them out of him. But then he was saying, he's casting demons out of people. Then, sometimes they come back and they've got more demons. Kind of like, well, wait a minute.
That sounds familiar from the Bible.
I don't think you were really doing it right then, And maybe it is like it. Maybe I'm not saying somebody who's fired up for the Lord might be able to cast out a demon in the moment,
I mean,
with
I'm
enough
willing.
faith and passion. I can believe that, But to maintain a demon-free life, it requires fasting and prayer and a change.
Well, yeah, I think you're right. About letting the worldly things go. I don't think getting more piercings in your face and more tattoos and wearing leather with spikes on it is going the right way.
And a little purple top hat.
Yeah.
Wow. I forgot about that.
With shining purple suits. And I don't think, I know this is a personal choice in fashion, but I don't think Jesus wanted his name plastered in gold on the inside rim of a cap, I don't think that's what he was aiming for when he wanted people to preach his name out to the nations type of thing. I don't think wearing a shirt with some kind of image of him on was necessarily the angle he was going for. You know?
Yeah, the top hat.
The sensational nature of his work. You know, he does this podcast with this hype man there going, wow, you know, about everything he says. Talking about the celebrity satanic worship and cults.
Yeah.
He's not actually saying anything new.
It's so cringy too.
We've been saying this for decades, you know, but now suddenly a guy comes out who looks like a clown is saying it, and everyone's all ears, you know. So there's something just slightly disingenuous about it. I can't quite put my finger on.
No, it's also, you get into my point. That guy, whoever that guy is with the different color hair, is always questioning him. He doesn't take it serious either. Like I remember when I was listening to it, and he was talking about one of these parties, and he was, saying there was a certain celebrity there, a female, and the guy that I was going, wow, he kept saying, like, was she hot? Was she sexy? Did you want to, have sex with her? It's like, dude, like, why is that important? Like, that's not even funny. You're claiming to have a Christian podcast, and those are the questions you're asking. You know what I mean? It's like, come on, man.
They're trying to appeal to that wider audience comedy factor about it all. It's for money at the end of the day. They're trying to create shock value, aren't they? And this is what I mean. I would put him under the bracket of what I call conspiratainment. It's not really the truth. I won't call him a part of the truther movement. He is a part of the conspiratainment movement. He's there to entertain people with titillating stories. But those people, will have a laugh and move on with their life and probably not think about it much afterwards. And like I said, if he wants to get into the truth, then he would be talking to people like us, wouldn't he? Surely.
Yeah, absolutely.
He would be doing it for free. He would be talking to as many people as he can. He'd be going from topic to topic, And from what I've recently gathered, I think he's gone down the mainstream churchianity route in his faith. He's now going to train to be a pastor, I believe, through Pastor Joey, the person who's trained him, who is his pastor,
Yeah.
And, a while ago in my research, I was looking at like church masses where everyone's dressed like a clown masses, they were called in churches. And it seemed like a ridiculous thing then. But now we're literally going to have a clown being trained to be a pastor, and it's normal and everyone's cheering it on. And there's just something spiritually wrong about it, especially from my own perspective, my own research side of it all. It's all come with the timing of this clown world situation we're in, where everything's now a mimetic joke layered under 10 layers of irony, and everything's irreverent and nothing's serious anymore. And everyone's ready to watch the world burn type of thing and laugh while it's happening. And it's like it's a symptom of the times. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's something just spiritually poetic about his whole existence and this timing. And then if you want to get really conspiratorial about it, just saying it outright, maybe he's a paid agent shill.
Yeah.
I mean,
no kidding. No, honestly,
if you want to get really conspiratorial, I've no evidence for that claim whatsoever. Like I said, I'm more inclined to my first thing that he's probably has good intentions, but he has a lot to lose yet from the world before he's got there, truthfully. But maybe he is just a paid agent.
No, absolutely.
Maybe.
No, absolutely.
And maybe not making that much money.
Not even. No,
unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that just, when I was following him, when I was past tense, I examined his videos of his deliverances, and some of them looked just, like an act. It just looked like a play. And I was in the Screen Actors Guild, and I took acting with Eric Morris one time and all this stuff. So I know the nuances of doing this, and some of the acting was really bad. And so, I mean, I don't know. I mean, a lot of people following him, and that's it for me. It's people out there, that follow him. Just be careful. Be careful what you hear, not just from him, from anyone, from me, even me talking right here. Do your own research. The Bible. Read the Bible, what it says about casting out demons, and listen to people like Richard Gallagher and Vicky Joy Anderson and Danny Fergalti, and people who've actually who been in this space of deliverance and know what it's all about. Or listen to David Carrico and John Pounders. Listen to people who know about this stuff, about SRA, satanic ritual abuse, and see, we're talking about this guy, this clown guy, and it's all relevant to the Hat Man and the Nephilim because of the imagery. You know, like you mentioned the hat, the top hat, and the colored clothes, and you know, unfortunately, you know, with you know, tattooing your body, the only way to remove that anywhere is with laser. And I don't know how effective that is, but that's always an option. But hey, you know what? That's his life. You know, it's unfortunate that, you know, people need to be more discernible when it comes to listening to anyone out there preaching. Even I'm a little suspect. I don't know how you feel about this, Paul, but I'm a little suspect about people putting a title of apostle before their name now these days. I watch these people, and a lot of it to me is like, it's all prosperity gospel for me. I look at it, it's just a big bank, a big money-making scheme.
Yeah, well, you see, I'm not really a member of a church myself, particularly. I'm more of the, you know, where two or more people meet type of attitude when it comes to church and fellowship.
Right.
I get my fellowship from my community I've built online. I have a Telegram group where we're all pretty strong in our faith, you know, and we edify each other. But when it came to coming to like churches, it's never something I've really followed because I wasn't impressed, first of all, by the level of knowledge they actually had. Sure, they may have preached Jesus, but I don't feel like they were giving enough meat to really sustain a strong faith individual. You know what I mean? And it's kind of, I needed more from what my local churches could offer me.
I know.
In that respect. But in terms of like mega churches where you have these characters who are basically trying to just funnel as much money as they can from people, and I think that's mainly an American thing, you know, not something I personally have had to deal with. But I've seen it, you know. Is it what's his name? Is it Joel something? Was he like a really famous one in your country?
Joel Osteen, yeah. Supposedly he's stepping away to do something else now.
He's made his money, has he?
Made his millions, man.
There you go. That's what I mean.
It's crazy.
If you've got to be wary of anybody preaching the gospel, that'll make you rich.
Yeah.
You know, prosperity gospel, I think it's called, and things like that. That's not what it's about. You know, that's not. You know, yeah. Faith is to help pull you out from the sea, from drowning, really, and it's to keep you above water in this world. That's what it should be for.
Yeah, there's
it's
no.
It's not there as a snorkel to help you dive deeper into the world.
Yeah.
And it's kind of got to be, you know, like I said, money is the root of all evil, unfortunately, and you see a lot of that going around, definitely.
Yeah, I was a part of a church called Destiny, and I you know, we're dropping bombs today. You know, I'll just say it because, you know, it's in my opinion. I have the right to my opinion.
It's pretty bad.
I went to this church and it was great. I mean, the lead pastor was great. It was really, I really was enjoying it until it started getting to more about money. It started getting more about raising money. And, we raised this amount of money, but, we can't get that building because we used to pay other bills. But they're wearing thousands of dollars worth of clothes, you know, and shoes and jewelry and crying and saying, you know, God gave up his only begotten son. What are you going to give to his church? You know, just stuff like that. It just struck me wrong. And last time I went there is several years ago, and I actually got nauseated. And I left and I never went back. And I ran into a few people who were going there, and a lot of them have walked away from that place because now, you know, they see what it is. It's just a 501c3 just making money. That's all it is. Mm-hmm. It's a money making organization. I don't even call it a church. And it's not by itself for me. There's a lot of them out in this world that they're all about money. You take that, once again, that Joel Osteen, in my opinion. And people get offended by me saying that. Well, then, wow, that's my opinion. If you really look at it, there was an incident where evidently someone stole money out of their account in his church, and I think it was like $600,000, like for one day of services or 2 days of services. Can you imagine that? All that money they're making?
Oh yeah.
And when that flood hit Texas, he didn't want to let the people into his church, and in the first go around,
he charged them to get in the church.
Crazy.
It's taking advantage of a Christian's good nature, isn't it? Really. I mean, someone's just pointed out in the chat here that I do have to correct myself. I said no. It's money that's the root of all evil. It's not. It's the love of money that's the root of all evil. You know, money is just a useful tool to get food and buy a home and live in the world. You know, but it's the passion, desire to have more. That's the root of all evil. You know, all you need is enough. You know, there's that famous thing, isn't there? That study that says all the person really needs is about £30,000 a year, and they can live comfortably and happy. Any more money than that doesn't really make happiness go up in any way, shape, or form. From then on, it's just a pursuit of power. It's something else then. It's gone away from just having a happy, comfortable life. You know, maybe that's an old statement because £30,000 isn't a lot of money these days.
No, it's not.
I'm pretty sure about, you know, let's make that up to 50,000 now, then let's say for inflation, you know. But like I said, the love of money is the issue. I suppose is what I need to correct myself saying there. So S York, thanks for correcting me on that one in the chat there. But like I said, it's taking advantage of people's good nature. You know, Christians want to support people; they want to give. You know, and I think it's kind of the problem with the world we live in is that people think money is the be all and end all of how to help somebody. It's kind of a part of our issue. You know, we realize it's not money necessarily an individual will need to make their life better. You know, you can give a homeless person a load of money, you know, and say go sort your life out. But what if they just go and just spend it all on drugs? Right. You know, it's they need saving is what they need. They don't need money.
Right.
Or they need a change of heart, and they need to be free from the demons and addictions. It's more than just throwing money at the problem. But obviously, our culture, especially Western culture, that's kind of how our understanding of what giving is. It's money, you know. So it's preying on misunderstandings. It's preying on people's good nature. In terms of like we were talking about Richie the Barber earlier, you know, we were mentioning the multicolored collective. I just want to bring it back to this whole idea about the clowns. You know, Richie the Barber is, I wouldn't say he comes under the umbrella of the kind of multicolored collective I was talking about, but I do think he's definitely a symptom of the times. Like I said, because there seems to be, let's say, Christian characters or in the political sphere, right-wing characters appearing to counter this heavy left-leaning thing we've had dominating us for the past 3 to 4 years, you know, this ultra-Marxist, liberal, social-Marxist attitude that's dominated the earth, you know. And you'll find, you know, it all kind of ties in together. I said these people, you know, dress like clowns. And well, it's mainly this new age liberal left-wing culture and ideology that also purports the use of drugs and psychedelics, you know, to contact these entities. And I was just, obviously, I think it's probably pertinent for us to talk about the DMT realm and where these jesters are as well. You know, I think it's probably a good way to tie it in.
Yeah, the jesters.
Absolutely. So, you know, I personally come from that new age Gnostic world. Like I said, I mentioned at the start of this stream, you know, I was taking psychedelics regularly, experimenting with them, trying to understand just exactly what it was and what this creation is, type of thing. And I'm lucky that on the other side of it, I realized it means there's a God who created all of this. I'm not saying do drugs to see God. I'm not saying you need to. I was just fortunate that that's what I took away from it. Most people don't. Most people start believing they are God as a result of taking these drugs, you know. But thanks to my own research along the side and my study into the biblical perspective, it quickly taught me what was really going on. I know I'll give a brief understanding of what I think this DMT realm is that everyone goes on about all the time in these cultures and these forums online, these trip reports. You know, they claim to see jesters there, or entities that look like jesters there, or machine elves, or self-dribbling, shape-shifting forms of light in some way, you know, or these psychedelic fractal snake-like animals, insectoid beings, and all these entities here in this ultra-psychedelic, colourful, fractaled, patterned world of some kind. And the common interpretation I find in these forums is always something like, this is a projection of my own collective unconsciousness, reflecting back to me, mankind's archetypical symbols. So that was a bit of a mouthful, you know. So if I could simplify that, it's basically saying collectively mankind has one consciousness. We have all come up with symbols to represent things which we share as a common symbol. And when you go to the DMT realm, you're going to the realm of where all that consciousness connects. And you're seeing all these symbols manifest in an attempt to teach you stuff to make you more enlightened. That's basically what they believe they're looking at. I would say it's far more simple and less egotistical and pretentious than that. I would say all you're looking at and all you're going to is this world that we experience in the physical. It's just the code of it. You're kind of going into the matrix underlying code that holds this world together. It's where all the information is stored that projects this world and creates this world and keeps this world in order. If you get what I mean? It's this world, just the other side. Okay? It's like a coin, you know. We're on one side of the coin. This world is the other side of the coin. One needs to exist for the other to exist. They have a job to do. It's the pipes, it's the wiring, it's the code of this world. And that's where the entities that were disembodied now reside. When they died, they couldn't leave this world. Their soul, spirit, whatever it is, isn't compatible with heaven or anything beyond this world. They are truly terrestrial beings, you know, very extraterrestrial, you know, more terrestrial than we can imagine. I think though we are terrestrial beings, I think our soul and our spirits is destined for higher things in the end, you know.
Yeah.
But theirs isn't. It's destined to be destroyed with this world. You know, that's their fate at the end of the day. They're stuck here. This is kind of what hell truly is, in my opinion. It's kind of, you know, where they're set to be. I think they've done a good job at convincing us that that's where we're going to end up, and maybe some of us will if we're not careful. You know, I don't want to get into that theology now exactly, but this DMT realm that looks beautiful and amazing isn't some collective consciousness projection of some kind, or some airy fairy psychedelic hippie nonsensical abstraction. It's a real place that exists all the time and is right here, right now. It is this world. It's just our vision is normally limited to perceive it for good reason.
Right.
I've been there, and I would not like to see that world all the time.
Yeah.
If I did, I would go insane. I wouldn't be able to live if I was constantly perceiving the DMT realm. I wouldn't be able to have a life. I wouldn't be able to exist in the world and experience creation as God intended me to experience it as a human being. You know, if you were constantly seeing that other realm, you would be seeing, well, first of all, Nephilim demonic spirits consistently. And that's never a good thing, you know. And they'll be able to communicate and mess with you so much that you would just drive yourself insane and probably end up killing yourself just to have a minute's peace. But even if you didn't see the entities, it's too much. It's too much information for your brain to process all the time. So I believe God has limited our perceptions for good reason, because this place where these fractaled beings reside that look like jesters, as people describe them in numerous trip reports, you know, it's not something to give into amazement about, truly. It's not anything special. It's just where they happen to be right now. And I believe God has limited our perception for our own safety. There may have been a time where we could perceive it, you know, in the very beginning.
Yeah.
There may have been a time. It's not the place itself isn't bad. It's necessary. It's a part of the workings of this world, you know. So I don't want to demonize the DMT realm exactly. Like I said, maybe it has its uses, it has a purpose, sure. But right now it's a war zone. And people who go there and smoke DMT and lift that veil for a second or 10 minutes or so, and they don't know this story, the history of why those things are there. They don't even know anything's there. And they're open to be told anything. And they'll believe it. Why wouldn't you listen to this creature telling you it's an alien? Why wouldn't you listen to this beautiful light being made of fractal psychedelic patterns when it tells you that it's an ascended master who's going to teach you how to become a god? Why wouldn't you believe it if you didn't know any better? It's probably the first thing you've ever experienced that's close to a spiritual experience. You're going to listen to the thing if you've got no discernment, and it'll tell you anything. It'll tell you whatever you want to hear that it knows you personally will believe, whether that's ascended masters, Pleiades from the I don't know, the Seven Sisters star system within the space, I don't know, interdimensional,
3Ds,
fifth
yeah.
dimensional beings, future selves come back to the past to help mankind advance. Just simply aliens of some kind. Angels is a common one, ascended masters, spirit guides. They'll tell you anything as long as you will believe it, whatever you will work for you. And that's what you find. People get told different things in different experiences. It's just like the alien abduction stories. They always get told a different story of where they come from and what they are.
Right. It's true.
That's what liars do. They can't all be true. So it's a lie. It's all a lie as far as I'm concerned. And the one thing that they all react to, they might not necessarily always flee like people claim, but if you bring up Jesus, they might try and change the subject pretty quick. They might dance around the point. They might put him down at first, but you be persistent about it and they will have a violent reaction. They are not interested in you going down that path, because as soon as you get the Holy Spirit in you, you're useless to them. As far as they're concerned, we can't inhabit the body anymore. It's, this, and they're a danger to us, so they'll try to do anything they can. They'll lie to you and deceive you to keep you coming back for as long as they can, to strengthen that connection with them, to make that veil thinner. So they're no longer shadow entities, but they become the full form in the physical realm, Any connection and tether to this realm they can strengthen, they will strengthen. And they'll lie to do it. And you see these forums, these trip reports online, and people are still so heavily deceived about what they're seeing because they're just craving some kind of spirituality, because this world is so devoid of it right now that they'll believe anything. The first thing that they're told from a deceiving spirit, they'll believe it because they're just desperate for something. Because the materialistic, secularistic, atheistic worldview that they've been bombarded with for the past 20 to 30 years isn't enough to sustain the soul. So they'll take anything. And it's not Jesus or God that's being taught to them. And it's what's encouraged by the culture is take the drugs, talk to the beings. That's what they're doing. That's what the kids and the youth are going to first. And they're giving into astonishment. They're believing these spirits, and no marvel. For Lucifer himself comes as an angel of light, and that's what's happening here.
That's what it is, man. I mean, you got the new age and you got them going to these realms and seeing these different creatures and gestures. And you had a Hat Man story too, right?
Oh yeah, I had a psychedelic experience before. The first time I took mushrooms, it was the first and last time actually when I took it. I was helping a friend move, and I remember I took it while we were loading up some stuff in the car. And as soon as I got in the car, it started to hit me. And for some reason, I just imagine you're driving the car, I'm driving the car, and I'm looking straight into the windshield. And everything looks fine, but like this image right in front of me, as clear as day, popped up of a dark entity with a hat, with that kind of top hat, but kind of more like a detective hat versus a top hat, and it had a trench coat, and it was brown dark leather, specifically. And the eye, it had no face. It was just all black, a black face with white glowing eyes. And then that was tripping me out. And my friend that I was with, ended up telling me, what's wrong? And I finally snapped out of it. I was like, what do you mean what's wrong? And they were like, you kept staring forward. I was trying to ask you a question. You weren't paying attention to me. And they also had taken the shrooms too. And I asked them, did you see that? Did you see what I just saw? I was like, what are you talking about? But anyways, as I got home, or as I got to the place where I was moving the stuff, I saw a bunch of like snakes in the walls, like a bunch of serpents, like just crawling through the walls. Just all I saw was snakes and a top hat man. And whenever I closed my eyes, I would see the snakes with my eyes closed in neon colors. And it just terrified me.
That does sound absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
That sounds crazy.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say this was on mushrooms. When I did mushrooms as well, I had a very weird experience. It's unlike any other psychedelic mushrooms. And the only way I can explain it is it's very earthy and thick and gloopy type of experience.
Yeah.
It's bubbly and gloopy and thick, and the air you can taste the air in, almost like you can pull it like putty type of thing.
Oh, wow.
It's a very earthly, deep, rich experience type of thing. And I do think in that form, you see the most trippy things, the darkest things, the most earthly demons, if you get what I mean.
Yes.
Because DMT is very bright, vivid, clear, crystalline. You know what I mean? Because you're just looking at the world. You know what I mean? Just flipped quickly. But it does feel like mushrooms has this heavy, intense body sleep paralysis style effect.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think with that paralysis effect is when demons can really mess with you and put fear into you where you can't run away, you can't control your limbs properly type of stuff. So people need to be careful with that one, definitely. But that sounds like a terrifying experience.
Absolutely, it was. It was everything demonic that I can possibly imagine.
Yeah, snakes in the wall. I mean, rainbow serpents in the wall.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you're twisted. Twisted.
It reminds me of what's that, Johnny Depp in Alice in Wonderland?
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of like, it reminds me of that. Different color psychedelics.
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. That's
the lizard men at the bar.
Exactly.
yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I used to love that film. I did. I used to really watch that film a lot at university during my psychedelic days.
Yeah, that is a good one to watch.
But I haven't watched it. I haven't watched it since then, and I don't think I'd enjoy it as much this day and age. But back in the day when I wasn't really, that was one, and it was one of those films I was kind of like encouraged to like by all my friends around me. Like, you've got to watch this film. It's great. It's a masterpiece. And I don't think I would consider it one now, but there's definitely an insight there into the reptilian aspect hinted within that film of the psychedelic experience, definitely. And they were all wearing posh suits, weren't they? Kind of like Freemasons as well, which I thought was interesting.
Now that you say that, yep, they had that.
Yeah, when I look back at that film, there's probably loads I could decode from it with new eyes. But I'm not going to waste my time watching that stuff anymore. So.
No, absolutely not. That was a great.
What we're coming up to now is almost 2 hours.
Yep.
Yeah. Is there anything else we want to discuss? I mean, I'm game to go for a little bit longer, but it's up to you guys if you want to call it a night.
Tell us some more stuff. Tell us some more stories.
Yeah. Have you got any other DMT trips that if you can remember? You mentioned we started off about that dream.
Yeah,
and I think people would want to hear more what you saw on DMT, like what was the landscape, what kind of creature did you see and stuff like that.
See, I got lucky that I didn't see the creatures during the trip itself. It was afterwards for me. After the experiences, I kind of opened up a gateway, if you get what I mean.
Right.
But during the experiences, I did DMT in 2 different settings, but I did it like twice in each setting, if you get what I mean. But different times apart. So I've done it 4 times, but we'll call it 2 sessions, if you get what I mean. And the first session, obviously the first time, you're a bundle of nerves. You're terrified of what's to come. It's like before you go on a roller coaster and you don't know what to expect type of feeling. But I took the 3 hits, I held them in, and I pierced through, and I ended up in a, very quickly the room kind of dissipated into itself. It's like everything was suddenly a geometric formed pattern, even the walls, the wrinkles on the bedding in front of me, everything about it was all perfectly meant to be type of feeling. And it all kind of just became a mandalaed circular form within me, but the form was made up of the objects in front of me. And the objects in front of me hadn't changed, but my perception of it all had changed. It's a very difficult thing to explain. So that was my first hint that I'm not actually leaving the room. Do you get what I mean?
Right.
It's more my perception of the room has changed. That's what I realized. My first thing about DMT I realized was that. And then I pierced through this mandala thing, and then the room was gone. So it was still the room. I knew I was in the room, but I wasn't looking at it anymore. Instead, I was within the center of a huge toroidal 3D realm form, and I was in the middle of it. That's radiating out of my head underneath me and within. And I was looking around this red and black patterned psychedelic, ordained with gold type floral geometric landscape type thing. But it's like I was locked within like a world of sorts, and I was watching it unfold in front of me. And I was kind of there for 10 minutes while also in the room. It's weird because I could interact with the people around me, but I was also not there with them anymore. It's a very weird sensation. And my friends who were next to me were saying he could see a woman dancing in the wall And I couldn't see it personally. So I didn't have a shared experience necessarily.
Right.
But then when the trip got to its highest point, I couldn't communicate with anybody anymore. I was gone, but I did feel like an intense like peace, I guess we'll call it. Ego death, I guess, is the word people always described it as.
Mm-hmm.
I no longer had a sense of self. I was gone in that respect.
Wow.
Time was gone, everything was gone, and I was kind of in the void, and the void was beautiful, but I no longer had any worries, doubts. I didn't have a future. I didn't have a past. There was just this one moment type of feeling, and it was all in all, if I'm being honest here, it was probably a pleasant experience.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
yeah.
I came back, but I didn't get any spiritual insight from it. I didn't come away from that thinking I was God. It was more of I think I've just seen through the creation a little bit and realized that it is a creation,
Yeah.
And I was strong enough by that point in knowledge, I think, to understand that I was looking for God, the real God, the Jesus God. I wasn't looking for demons or anything else. I was well aware of the jesters and the machine elves, and what people claim to see, so I was half expecting something to appear, but it didn't. Because I was also aware of my demon research by this point, I think, I've been doing a lot of psychedelic mushroom exploration, MDMA, without that knowledge. But by this point, I was already prepared. I wasn't a Christian by this point, but I was already researching the perspective. I was coming out of the New Age slowly, and I was never really a New Age hippie type person. I never have been. I've always been me, as I'm talking to you now, kind of, I was never into the whole tarot card thing and crystal power and all that sort of stuff.
Right,
That just never. Yeah. I was more logistical about it. Like I wanted to kind of be scientific method to understanding these experiences type of attitude. I really want to understand what this really is without trying to add too much artistic layering to my experience. I'm just going to take the experience for what it actually was type of attitude. And I came away from my first trip knowing for a fact it's a creation. I didn't make it. Something else has made this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not as physical as I thought it was. I perceive it to be physical, sure, but there's also this other side to it, which is a spirit world. We'll call it. It has many names,
Right.
But it's here right now in the room with me. And I suppose in a way I was blessed that no entity did come to me.
Yeah.
Maybe no entity did appear because it already knew I was armed with the knowledge to defend myself if necessary. Now, I'm not saying I was a Christian, but in that moment, I probably would have called on Jesus if one did turn up. Do you get what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's kind of, I was already at that point. Maybe it was too late for them to convince me of anything, so they just left it. Maybe the demon's attitude was, it's probably best not to appear. Maybe then he'll believe we don't exist. You know what I mean? Something like that. I can only speculate on why nothing came to me. So months passed after this, about 6 months, and I reunited with my old university friends again, and we did it again. This is when the periods I was doing this. So I'd already left university by this point. I was already going into my faith heavily, you know what I mean? And I wouldn't say I was fully given over to Christ by this point, but I was close, but I was still dabbling a little bit in this realm. Still smoked weed, you know what I mean? That type of thing. So I did this again. And, I was with people, and I remember looking into the face as I took the hit of one of my close friends there. And I saw in his face kind of every nodal connection point of the design where all the dots and veins connected.
That's weird.
And it's kind of like I was looking at the map of his design.
That's
You know,
crazy.
when you see like when an NPC gets created in a computer, before all the details get added, it's like a mesh.
Right.
All the layers get added to.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I could see that energetic mesh within him. All the points of his form were perfect, even though he was imperfect and no one's symmetrical and everything like that. But he was perfect still, in his own way. It was it's almost though I saw every follicle on his head. I saw every freckle. I saw every crease, every line, every pour. I saw the blood run through his veins, type of thing. I could see it all as one image.
That's crazy.
Finally. And it was psychedelic, man. That's the only way I can describe it. But that was another hint to me that we are created beings. We are designed.
Crazy. That's a crazy experience. I mean,
yeah.
What did you see these like blood vessels and hair? You see that like in images, or like are you?
No, I meant like I could see through him in a way.
Oh wow.
He was, and I could see the skin was no longer just this one thing. You realize it's constantly changing color because of the blood flow through the vessels within the surface skin. That's
crazy.
It's not, and it's kind of like normally, like frames per second when you view something.
Mm-hmm.
We have a digital way of describing it. I feel like normally we see things at 60 frames per second. It's probably faster. But I felt like I was seeing everything at like 10,000 frames per second. So I noticed and processed more of the details of what was actually happening. And it's kind of like you realize, that whole idea that particles are empty space,
mm-hmm.
And everything is just vibration and frequency that holds it together.
Yeah.
I felt like I could see that finally.
That's crazy.
Like it wasn't that I could finally realize that although he is in front of me physical, he is in constant flux and change. In a sense, he's a spiritual being still in a physical body, He is the body and the spirit at the same time type of thing. It was a very weird, it's hard to explain, but I could just see it finally, and I could see it myself. I could look at my hands and I'd see the same thing, constantly. It's kind of, there's so much happening at once in this world that it boggles the mind that it's all working. Do you get what I mean? And it's kind of,
I do.
This isn't just something that happened by chance. This isn't a result of a chaotic explosion.
Yeah, theory.
It all became extremely apparent to me that, we are created beings in a created world and there is a God. I could see it clearly. I have no pretext or delusion that I created any of it. I was embarrassed to imagine that maybe I did think that at one point.
Wow.
How stupid and naive of me to think I created this. I haven't got a clue what's going on. Like, this is way beyond any human, anything I could come up with. It's and as I did the whole progressing through the mandala thing again, as the room became one with everything else, and I could hear this music playing. There wasn't any music playing, but I could hear this beat, this rhythm, and it was kind of like with like a bass humming over it, it was just going and going constantly. And it was like the world made that noise. You know what I mean? The whole world was vibrating this constant sound, and the walls were dancing like color, but waves splashing into each other, and I could see these humans that I've known for years as these beautifully perfect creations around me, these, more magnificent than any creature I've ever seen in nature before type of thing. And I just, all I did for the rest of the trip was rock back and forth with my hands clasped together under my chin, saying, "My God, my God, my God, my God," over and over again in astonishment. That's amazing. And after that day, I never did another drug ever again.
Wow, that's a heck of an experience.
Well, no psychedelic or hard drug ever again. I didn't need to. I'd seen enough,
Bro, that was an insane story.
And then after that time, over maybe a few years after I'd cold turkey quit cannabis.
Cold turkey? Wow.
I switched to, I actually documented the whole experience of quitting on YouTube, but I had to remove it all due to drug related stuff and copyright.
Really quick, how was it? How was the first day? Because I'm trying to quit this stuff myself.
It was okay. Well, I'd say the first 3 weeks are tough.
Like no sleep.
The first 3 days are bad. Okay,
that's what's hard for me is the sleeping thing. Is like I need to sleep.
Not sleep for the first 3 days. Okay,
oh my Lord,
be prepared for that.
Yeah.
But once you get past that, you will sleep, but you will dream. And you will wake up a lot because of it, because those dreams are going to be incredibly intense. because you haven't dreamt properly for as long as you've been smoking that stuff.
Yeah.
And you'll remember just how psychedelic and real things can get in your dreams, and it will be oh so overwhelming. You will wake up in fear from what you're witnessing in your dreams. They'll be vivid and real. And then after that first week, you'll be suffering from like a depression, because everything cannabis has been suppressing, the things you didn't want to think about, the things you smoked to forget, the problems you ran away from and put to the wayside and not dealt with head on, will all start to come back to your forefront of your memory. All the work you've been avoiding doing on yourself and within your life, you will have to deal with.
Oh, man.
You can't just suppress it anymore with cannabis and move on and forget about it and live in the now anymore and forget about the future or the things you've done in the past. Everything will come back to haunt you. And you'll start to realize, I have some work to do. I've got some people to talk to. You know, I've got some bridges I need to rebuild.
Yeah.
And that's upsetting and a horrifying thing to realize.
Sounds awful, but I agree with you. It has to be faced.
It's work that needs to be done. Yeah.
Face it.
But then after I would say the physical issues disappear after 3 weeks.
Okay.
Then you're left with dealing with the mental things you've suppressed for all those years.
Wow.
You'll have to deal with them now. You can't just run away from them anymore and smoke something and forget, you know. And that's taken me a long time to fully reconcile. You know, myself, I think I quit cannabis 7 years ago now. I've quit I've quit nicotine this year, at the start of the year. I was on an electric cigarette for about 5 years. I quit tobacco around the same time I quit cannabis, maybe just a little bit before. But I've lowered the strength of the nicotine over those 5-6 years to the point of nothing. And this year, just after the new year, I put it in the bin and I haven't gone back since, and I haven't needed any. So I am finally, it's taken 9 years since I've been saved to fully drop the major addictions I've had.
That's hard, man.
It didn't happen overnight, but I couldn't have done it without my faith.
Yeah, the weed thing I've just been doing for so long, you know, and I've cut back a lot. I used to smoke, I'm pretty sure you know what wax is.
That's not terminology we use here. Is it like a quarter, an eighth? Is it a
wax? Is like it's like a concentrated form. It looks like glass or putty, and you burn it up.
Resin. We call it resin.
Yeah, resin. So I used to do that like every day, 10 times a day. Now I'm down to just smoking flower now, and believe it or not, like I'm starting to get to the point now where, without even telling myself, like just the process to break it up and pack it, and I get paranoid now when I smoke. I used to get relaxed. Now I get paranoid. So I'm starting to see like this is all resolving itself. Like I'm smoking less just by thinking about the process of packing it. And all of a sudden it's been giving me a paranoid thought versus a relaxing thought. It used to make me relax. Now it makes me paranoid. So
yeah. Well, I think, you know, learning about this type of stuff changes you anyway.
Yeah.
I only quit because I wanted to. Up until that point, I didn't want to quit. But the more I learned, the more I realized I need to. And you have to want to do it before you can quit. You're not just going to quit for no reason, you know. But it sounds like you want to. Yes. And I think it will come naturally. But obviously, my advice is don't expect it to be instant. It's not. It'll be a long, drawn-out process, no doubt. Don't be afraid to go cold turkey. The worst parts are over after a week.
Yeah.
Okay. Give yourself a period of time where you know you have some time off from work, I would say. You know, next time you have a holiday booked where you're not going away anywhere in particular, you've just got some time off work, that would be the ideal time for you to be able to work some stuff out on your own, you know?
Yeah.
Whether that's staying in bed all day, nursing a headache.
That's the only thing I can imagine.
You know what I mean? Like, and obviously, I don't know what it's like in your social life, but it's best not to surround yourself with people who still do it.
No, absolutely. I agree. I've actually changed my, I changed the people who I've spent my time with very dramatically over the past couple of years. And I've always believed in Jesus for the longest time since I was like, since I can remember, but I've recently taken it serious and got baptized a couple months ago. And I'm really trying to, even my pastor said the same thing, all these things you have to stop doing are not going to happen overnight, but you need, but over time, if you believe in Christ and you follow the steps, you're going to be sanctified over time. And,
Yeah.
and it's been working, you know, things are happening little by little. I mean, I used to be a very impatient person. I still am. I have anger issues, but, they've actually calmed down a lot, and I pulled back from a lot of different things, but, yeah. So,
I mean, I know we understand that our ultimate role model is Jesus at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But no one's going to ever reach perfection like him. Okay. So compare yourself to who you were yesterday is the best advice I can give in that respect.
Amen.
You know, every day you remain sober is a step forward. The problem is, this is advice for other people out there who might be listening who are struggling with the same thing. The problem is when you have all these friends who are heavily seeped in this pro-cannabis culture, and it is a culture, you know, it's, they back each other up, don't they? And it's like a feedback loop of supporting smoking cannabis that kind of happens. When you quit, your friends aren't going to be supportive of you, okay? Because you quitting is throwing shade on them in their eyes, okay? You saying, I'm going to quit this stuff is, all they hear is, you're judging me for not quitting. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And then they always try to use this. I mean, I think cannabis is the only drug that people always try to defend by saying, oh, it's natural, it grows, it's not really a drug, but it absolutely is. You know, speaking from experience, I need to smoke it every night to go to sleep. That is a drug. It's not by choice, it's by wanting.
Absolutely. No, I was the same. I was smoking about 4, maybe 8 joints a day at its height, for 8 years straight, like from morning till nighttime, or I would work to buy it, and I would just wait to get back home and spark up a joint. Basically, that's all I lived for.
Yeah, that was the best. That's the best part of the day. You work all day and you just wait and you get home to get that
but the
joint.
thing is that all my money went on it, so I was working to buy it to go home and smoke it, then going back to work, and it's kind of this endless cycle. And the biggest thing I will say is quitting. You will very quickly see the amount of money you have.
Yeah.
Okay. And that will be your first incentive to carry on, I would say. Because the shock of how much money I spent on that once I actually put it in perspective after I quit was ridiculous. It's ridiculously expensive in England. It is, especially. It might be cheaper there for you in America.
Oh, California is pretty cheap, but it's still, it's not that cheap. It's about another car payment a month.
That's what I mean. It's no joke when it comes down to it. That's money that can be best spent elsewhere. On more productive, useful things for your life. It's a waste of time and your life smoking. You'll realize how many years you've wasted, once you're free from it, type of thing. It keeps you locked in such a weird mindset of constantly being in the now, like I tried to explain earlier. And it's hard, I feel like I've lost a lot of time because of it. I've lost 8 years of my life.
Oh my God. Tell me about it. I've wasted so much time. There's a lot of things I could have gotten done, but you just want to get high. I mean, it was when I first started smoking, I was probably late teen. And I noticed that I spent a lot of nights wasting my time sitting in the backseat of a car outside of my house or outside of my friend's house, just smoking weed and listening to music and just breaking down the lyrics of a ridiculous song that means absolutely nothing for my faith and my personal, immortality. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I was lucky. Well, I say lucky enough, but I could smoke at my own home. I had quite liberal parents in that respect. I had a brick shed in the garden, which kind of made my own space. And I had friends over. I had a band. I made music. We made music together. It was all kind of just one thing, and my place was the place to go. So it kind of created a strong feedback loop culture for me, which was difficult to break because I'd been letting other people down. But I let all that go eventually. And I'd say since I've obviously been born again and changed my worldview and the things I do, I've left people by the wayside who haven't changed, and they've kind of abandoned me as well in that respect. Because maybe we never truly were friends. It was always just about the drugs.
Exactly. I was about to say that.
Yeah.
I have friends too that are just, I mean, they're in their late 30s and they're still bragging about smoke. Oh man, I'm getting high right now. I'm about to get high, about to do this, about to buy this super magnum joint with 10 joints in one that's dipped in oil and dipped in this and that. You're cool, who, what kind of immature mindset would be like, yeah man, let me join you, bro. Like they literally post stuff on Instagram hey, you know, about to spark a joint. Who wants to come meet up with me in the parking lot? Bro, you're 40. You sound like a pervert or a weirdo. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. So yeah, but it becomes it's an identity issue. You know, we're talking about earlier on. We're talking about Richie the Barber, weren't we? Who is Richie the Barber without the clown outfit
Exactly.
being the persona? Well, a lot of people who suffer from the addiction of cannabis, it's the same thing. Who am I without cannabis?
Yeah.
You know, my entire persona is built around being the guy who smokes all this weed. And people, you know, see me as that type of thing. And I don't, and some people aren't ready to let that go. It's their character, it's who they are, you know. And what I would say is, you know, who God truly intended you to be will become clear once you quit, you know, and you'll realize he had a much better plan for you than that. And the thing is, I empathize with people who smoke it. You know, it's a good way to bury the trauma. It really is. And I don't put anyone down who does it. I get it. And in my own way, I was running from my own traumas, you know, deaths and traumatic events in the family and things like that, heartbreak, you know, and abandonment stuff. And you use it as a crutch to forget, you know, and I get it. I empathize with it. And you find most addictions, I think there's a psychiatrist called Gaber Mate, I think his name is.
Yeah.
And he basically has this whole thing about, you know, people aren't really addicted to drugs. They're just hiding from a traumatic event.
Oh, yeah. That's
and all you have to do is confront the traumatic event and deal with that, and the addiction will drop. And, you know, he's found through studies that that's what it's really about at the end of the day.
And you really got to be happy with yourself to realize that, man. That's a really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
In that nowadays and age.
We're all, who hasn't lived in this world and experienced trauma in some way, you know, and we're the most drugged up generation ever.
Yes. But
you know, I cast no judgment on people who have addictions. Everyone's addicted to something.
Absolutely.
You know?
But I do believe how cannabis is, like you said. I mean, is it definitely there's a difference between someone who gets high all day and, you know, they live, you know, I'm just being stereotypical, you know, in America, you know, someone who gets high all day, who's way too old to be living with their parents, who just gets high and they only work just to buy weed and play video games or watch TV or masturbate, whatever it is they do all day. And there's a person who smokes, who has, you know, actual pain, who has actual, you know, hard time sleeping, and they only do it for that reason versus, you know, taking a bunch of NyQuil or whatever the case may be. Not saying that person, you know, that's taking it for this is in any kind of right, but there are medical facts, you know, that cannabis oil or whatever CBD does some kind of helping. But there's also the person, like I said, that just smokes all day and they overextend themselves in their low budget of money just to get high. I mean, that's a waste of your life.
There's a difference between using something and abusing something.
Absolutely.
You know, I do think, like I said, there are great medical advantages for cannabis, and when used as the tool in a correct way for people. Like I said, people with, is it Parkinson's, the one with the shake?
Yes. I train people with that, yes.
It helps with that dramatically, you know, and it gives people a better quality of life. And, you know, and at the end of the day, these plants and herbs are God's creation. You know, I'm not going to try and get too hippie about it, but there's probably a legitimate use for these, which may have been intended, you know, but smoking 8 joints a day is not how God was intending this to be used, you know, and running away from your emotional issues is not what it was supposed to be used for, you know. So I'm all for it being, you know, used in a correct way that helps better people's lives in some way. You know, it's not like I'm a zealot about this, you know. Like I said, I empathize with people. I've been there, you know. I get it, you know. And this is not something you should be judgmental about. You know, we're all damaged. We're all addicted to something. We all have a battle,
Absolutely.
a demon we're battling or have battled with, or, you know, we're all at different levels of basically coming back to God, you know. And your struggle is cannabis, as was mine, and many other things, I'm sure, you know. That is how it is, and it's all trauma based. I do think it comes down to trauma at the end of the day. I think we all need something to just have a moment's peace.
Yeah, absolutely. And the next time I talk to you, I'm gonna brag about how I've been smoking less, because as you were just saying, I can't say nothing against it because I just submitted it right here on live that I still do it, but I am cutting back. And I mean, I used to be that guy that used to have, you know, I got the I got the purple, I got the sativa, I got the indica, I got the blue dream, I got all of it, bro. And I got the edible and I got the wax. I used to be that guy who just needed to get high I need to get high to watch a movie. I need to get high to play a video game. I need to get high to drive my car. I need to get high to listen to music. And at that point, you're just, a pure addict. And I'm no longer like that. But I have a lot of time to still get off of this stuff, but I don't think I can do it cold turkey like you did, but I'm slowly getting there.
Oh, I'm sure you could.
Thank you.
You just need strong enough reason.
Yeah.
Find your reason is what I'll say. And I think you could do it. I mean, my reason was I realized I wasn't in control anymore. Like I said, I smoked 8 joints a day. I had to smoke to feel normal. I didn't get high anymore. I felt normal when I smoked. That's when I knew this is not me anymore. I'm not in control anymore. I don't smoke to get high. I smoke just to feel normal. And that realization, shook me to the core, basically. It's kind of like, who am I? I'm not in control. I'm literally not controlling myself here. Something else is in control. And I was not having it anymore. It's kind of, no, I'm taking back control of my life. It's kind of how I thought about it. And I just did it. And it was scary. It's like taking a bungee jump, it's like jumping out of a plane, not knowing whether or not the parachute's going to work. But it's a leap of faith at the end of the day. I would say just take it and you'll be fine. You will be okay. The first 7 days are the worst. The first 3 days are the worst, but 7 days is rough. By 3 weeks, you're out of the body problems, the body withdrawal symptoms. Then you'll just have to deal with the psychological issues that you've been ignoring.
Well, I'm going to make sure to reach out to you so you can have my back and help me get through it.
You've got my Facebook. Yeah, absolutely.
I got
reach
you
out
right
to
here.
whenever you want. Yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, though. All your advice and everything you've been through, I really appreciate that because I'm dead serious about quitting eventually soon.
Yeah. Good luck. That's all I can say. Good luck to you, honestly.
I think it was good talking about that, the Hat Man, DMT, and also addictions. I think it's good for people to hear that because some out there need to hear it. I personally,
it's all connected at the end of the day.
Yeah.
We're talking about spiritual stuff here. I mean, we haven't really mentioned the clowns much in this talk, but if people listen to our previous talk, I cover it in depth there. I suppose the Hatman topic is kind of like an extracurricular topic for the clowns. But what it inevitably leads into is spiritual experiences, which people crave and search for through mediums like drugs. And unfortunately, drugs are an addictive thing,
Absolutely.
And I suppose talking about addiction at the end is probably a good way to kind of summarize the whole talk.
Exactly. It was a great talk. Me personally, I don't, smoke cannabis but I do smoke cigars.
Too many cigars.
Yeah, two cigars a day. I'm trying to quit. So we all have our little addictions, whatever it is. People out there, if it's too much coffee or too much cigarettes or too much candy bars. Everyone's got something going on in their lives, and no, we're not perfect, but we're trying to get there. And but it was great, discussing this episode was really great. The Hat Man, the DMT, your experiences, line experiences with cannabis and all that stuff, all it ties into the spiritual world and your spiritual well-being. I think this is awesome. This show was really, really great. Hit on a bunch of points on today's world and what people see and the new age and taking DMT and other psychedelics and opening up the third eye and seeing all these weird things. And just, it was just a lot. This show had a lot into it, but we loved having you on. It was great, Paul.
Gotta do it again, buddy. We really do.
It's been a pleasure. Invite me back anytime. I'm sure I can find a slot for you guys. I'm looking to have another talk with Vicky Joy Anderson, actually, myself. I think you guys introduced me to her, so thanks for that as well.
Oh, yeah, she's definitely a treat, man. She's a very smart woman. Yeah.
She is, yeah. I think she's been away on a conference the past 10 days, but I'm going to get back in touch with her soon and see if I can get a talk with her.
Right? She's getting all too popular for us.
Yeah, she's getting out there.
Yeah, it might be cool if maybe we could all get together and have kind of like a round table talk.
Oh, we've done that before. We do it again. Definitely, definitely do that. Definitely gotta get it going.
I don't know if Gary Wayne will be up for that, but I've arranged to talk with Gary on the 11th of October.
He might come on. Just we got to find a topic for Gary Wayne and Vicky Joy and get them all on.
Hey, if you get Vicky Joy and Gary Wayne on the same podcast, you're not going to get one word in. So just have a warning with that.
Fair warning.
No, I know. I've talked to Gary before on my channel, and like I said, I've arranged to talk with him again on the in October. So I'm looking forward to that as well. But yeah, it seems since I've come back to YouTube, I'm starting to network with a lot of podcasters and people of similar minds like you guys, and obviously Vicky and stuff like that. Mark from My Family Thinks I'm Crazy podcast as well. Yeah. And it's nice to be back into this community again. It's quite a strong one. It seems a lot more tightly knit than it used to be. I think a lot more people these days in the conspiracy world and this train of thought type world it's kind of, the knowledge is kind of settled now. There's less arguments about it. We kind of all figured it out.
Yeah, I know. We got some facts down, some facts. Yeah, we know giants are real now.
Now. Yeah, there's less arguing about what the situation is. We're all kind of blatantly aware of it now. But no, it's been great to connect with you guys. It really has. And I look forward to doing it again.
Absolutely. God bless.
Thank you. Yeah, you can find Sabbath at Midnight podcast on Facebook,
Instagram, TikTok, Sabbath at Midnight, just like that. And don't forget to, like, share, subscribe, and also follow Paul Stobbs right here on YouTube is Understanding Conspiracy. One word, Understanding Conspiracy. And
that's right.
Yeah, God bless. Go ahead. Actually, Paul, go ahead and get more information out. Do you have any other websites that you got?
No, it's all on YouTube for me. I have my channel. You can email me at understandingconspiracy@gmail.com. If you have any information you want to share with me or you just want to connect. I have a Patreon, which you can go to just by searching Understanding Conspiracy. I do an extra video every week for patrons only on there and share extra things like snippets of my book. I am writing a book on this whole Nephilim clown situation. I am 13 chapters in, so I'm a third of the way and getting there.
Nice.
There's a GoFundMe to support that if you want to. You can find the links on my channel to get to that as well. But obviously, hopefully the book should be ready by the end of the year. And that should be, well, maybe not the end of the year, but roughly halfway through next year, I'm hoping it should be published by that point and proofread and everything, all the legal stuff done and dusted, and second draft stuff all sorted. So that's to look forward to on my channel. But if you want to just join in with the conversation, go to YouTube, Understanding Conspiracy, or you can find me on Telegram now as well. I have a nice big group chat there where you can get in touch with me straight away. We have a nice little community on there. We have a great back and forth. It's good fun. We share information on there regularly. So Telegram and YouTube.